Thanks for being here, folks. Really excited to get to the debate in just a minute. Just wanted to first say I'm James. I host Modern Day Debate and the event organizer. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks for your support. We really enjoyed doing this. It's a blast. And hopefully good to meet you. And if you haven't, just come over. Housekeeping means if you happen to go to the bathroom, if you just go right across the hall, it's almost a straight shot out that door in the back. There are restrooms there. They're single occupancy, so just so you know, lock it once you're in there, and then just kind of like in case someone forgot to lock it, audience, like gently tap on the handle, like slowly open and look away. But this door we're trying to keep out of use, so it's supposed to be locked, and that's just so we have a really picture of who's coming in and out of the room. And then we'll have, if there are police, walk through. That's normal. We've invited them just to have a presence here just to be sure that everything's smooth. I don't think there's gonna be a problem, but we just want to know they're welcome. And they might walk through. So in terms of other housekeeping things, what we'll do is we should start this one about on time. And then we'll of course have dinner that's scheduled for 5:30 if you're a VIP ticket buyer. If you're not, Wendy's only like 2 minutes away. So any questions though about the facility? Anything that I didn't cover or anywhere I can help you out? Yeah.
Will there be a Q&A after the debate?
Yes, there will be. And this one's a little bit longer. Last one was only scheduled for 20 and it didn't even go that long. So this one, if I remember right, 30 minutes. In fact, yeah, what I'll do is I'll read you guys the format just so you have an idea what to expect. Thanks, Jake. As Jake said, there's a 30-minute Q&A that we'll wrap up with, but before that we'll have 13-minute opening statements, 6-minute rebuttals, then 60 minutes of open dialogue, and then 4 minutes of closing statements. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is just start the stream as these should be recorded, and I don't even see your right hand. Oh, that's right. Excellent. So just one or two more quick housekeeping things. So first, thanks so much for being here for this debate on the evidence. Does it point toward God, or you could say away from God, loosely speaking? As well as, I want to let you know, DebateCon 4 is our next conference. That's going to be in Dallas on November 4th. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a full day of religion debates, religion and atheism. So we hope you see you there. And if you're listening online, and if you're not able to make it, that will be live streamed on the YouTube channel. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and that way if you're across the world, you can watch it that way. That will also be streamed live and for free for the public online. But we're going to jump into this debate. Jake is going first for his 13-minute opening statement. Thanks so much, Jake, for being with us. The floor is all yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome everyone. I just want to start off by thanking Modern Day Debate and James for hosting this debate. And I want to thank Aron for participating today. I also want to mention that I am here on behalf of Muslim Debate Initiative, which is an organization that I'm representing. For the purposes of this debate, I want to point out, which as James already mentioned, the title of the debate is the evidence for or against God? For the purpose of this debate, I take evidence for a hypothesis to be that which raises the probability of a given theory to be true. I take evidence against a hypothesis to be that which lowers the probability of a given theory to be true. Aron, my debate opponent, in a video entitled Theism is Not Rational, states, and I quote, "What everyone means by God is a conscious thinking mind," close quote. I'm happy to accept this definition for the purposes of this debate, so long as we understand that what I mean by God is an eternal agent, i.e. a being that performs actions, is the creator of all, and is the foundation of all knowledge and truth. Now, I spoke to Aron on the Thought Adventure podcast channel previously about whether or not something necessary exists. During the discussion, Aron stated, and I quote, "I don't think it's possible for there to be absolutely nothing. That impossibility would make the existence of something absolutely necessary," close quote. It suffices to say that Aron does not have an issue with the concept of necessity. I will now provide an argument for what this necessity must be. This argument is actually partially inspired by Aron himself. In a video on Aron's YouTube channel entitled The Reason for Reason, he says, and I quote, "In my perspective, accuracy and accountability are paramount. Truth matters more than whatever we would rather believe," close quote. So as we can see in this quote, Aron says that the truth matters more than whatever we believe. Let's see if he's going to stand by that today or if he will abandon the truth for his own unjustified beliefs. I will now present the following argument for the existence of God. It is an argument from necessary truth. First, I will run through the premises of the argument until I reach the conclusion. Next, I will circle back around and give reasons for affirming two of the premises that are important in the argument. Okay, so the argument goes like this. Argument from necessary truth. Premise 1. Necessarily, either the law of non-contradiction is true or the law of non-contradiction is not true. I don't see any reason why Aron, or anyone else for that matter, would attempt to challenge this premise. Either the law of non-contradiction is true or it isn't. There doesn't seem to be another option. Premise 2. Premise 1 is necessarily true, i.e. it is true and could not have failed to be true. Again, I don't see why Aron, or anyone else for that matter, would want to challenge this premise. Premise 1 is true and there doesn't seem to be any possibility of it being not true. If Aron would like to challenge either of these first two premises, he's more than welcome to do so. Premise 3. True propositions exist. Truth is a property of propositions. This is one of the two premises I'll come back to for further explanation. Therefore, premise 4, at least one true proposition exists necessarily. This simply follows from the first three premises. Premise 5, propositions are mental entities, i.e. thoughts. This is the second premise that requires further elaboration. I will come back to this in just a moment. Premise 6, therefore necessary propositions are necessarily existent thoughts. Again, this simply follows from premises 4 and 5. Premise 7, thoughts cannot exist apart from an intellect. I don't think Aron would argue against this premise. It seems pretty straightforward that thoughts are within minds or intellects. It is not as if we can have free-floating thoughts existing apart from minds. Conclusion, therefore a necessary intellect exists. We finally arrive at the conclusion, a necessary intellect exists. This simply follows from what I've mentioned in the previous premises. This also coincides with the definition of God from Aron that I cited earlier. All I mean by a necessary intellect is a being that must exist and is capable of grounding truth and knowledge. Apart from premises 3 and 5, I take the rest to be uncontroversial. I will now provide reasons for affirming both of these premises. Let's start with premise 3, true propositions exist. First, let me define what a proposition is. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy entry on propositions, propositions are shareable objects that are the primary bearers of truth and falsity. In philosophy, there is a distinction that is well known between truth makers and truth bearers. A truth maker is that which makes a proposition true. Let's take the idea that water is wet. The truth maker in this case would be the existence of water and the fact that it has the property of wetness. Now, the truth bearer or the proposition is the thing that exists that we ascribe a truth value to. We say that that thing is true. So, now that we have an idea of what propositions are, what are some reasons to think that they exist? Well, one reason to think that propositions exist is that ordinary language supports this notion. For example, I believe that this debate is in Houston, Texas. Presumably, Aron believes the same thing. That same thing is the shared content between our beliefs. That is the proposition, which in this case happens to be true. Another reason for thinking that propositions exist is the notion that truths exist that have not yet been discovered. Aron himself affirms this in many places. One example of this is when he says, and I quote, "Once upon a time, our ancestors believed that thunder, lightning, and volcanoes were the result of God's actions, that the stars and planets had human attributes, that sickness was a curse of witchcraft and epilepsy was demonic possession. In each case, the real truth might never have been discovered if we'd been satisfied by those lies." Close quote. So, Truth seems to be something that we can seek for. People don't typically seek for things that they know do not exist. Aron speaks of the real truth being something which is discovered as if it already exists and is waiting to be realized by humans. All of this points to the reality of propositions. Another reason for thinking that propositions exist is because we ascribe properties to them. For example, we ascribe the properties of truth and falsity to them. For any object that we ascribe properties to in some possible world, including this actual world, it must exist. Aron unknowingly himself affirms the well-known truth maker, truth bearer distinction that I explained earlier. Aron states, and I quote, "Reality itself is not truth, but statements about reality can be if they're true." So, if we have to determine whether it is true before we call it truth, then the truth is whatever statement can be shown to be true, and that's simple enough. Close quote. We see that Aron clearly distinguishes between that which makes something true and truth itself. He ascribes truth to statements about reality. However, there are good reasons to think that statements or sentences are not the primary bearers of truth. Why is that? Well, you can have multiple sentences in different languages that assert the same truth. You can also have distinct sentences in the same language that express the same truth. This shows that there is something more fundamental that is shared amongst the distinct sentences. The content between sentences is what is shared. There are other reasons why one should think that propositions exist, but that should suffice for now. Now that I've given good reasons to think that propositions exist, let's take a deeper look into the nature of propositions. If propositions exist, then what exactly are they? My claim is that propositions are best understood as mental entities or thoughts. One reason to think this is because propositions have a unique characteristic known as intentionality. Intentionality is a technical philosophical term that refers to aboutness or being directed towards something. For example, the sentence, "This debate is in Houston, Texas," is about something, namely the city of Houston and this debate. The same is true of our beliefs. Our beliefs are about certain things. This directedness towards other things is a distinct feature of intentionality. Atheist and naturalist philosopher Alex Rosenberg expresses the difficulty of explaining how our thoughts, if they are purely physical, could be about anything at all. He states, and I quote, "What we need is a clump of matter, in this case the Paris neurons, that by their very arrangement of its synapses, points at, indicates, singles out, picks out, identifies," and here we just start piling up more and more synonyms for being about another clump of matter outside the brain. But there is no such physical stuff, he says. Physics has ruled out the existence of clumps of matter of the required sort. There are just fermions and bosons and combinations of them. None of that stuff is just all by itself about any other stuff. There is nothing in the whole universe, including, of course, all the neurons in your brain, that just by its nature or composition can do this job of being about some other clump of matter, close quote. Rosenberg, in defense of his naturalism, actually denies that humans think about anything. Aron can take the same position if he wishes, but that would render this entire debate futile. If Aron cannot think about anything, then he certainly cannot think about providing evidence against the existence of God. Another important aspect of intentionality is what is called aspectual shape. This refers to the way in which an entity is understood. For example, take the sentences, "Jake Brancatella debates atheists," and "The MuslimMetaphysician debates atheists." These two sentences point towards the same man, namely me, but in different ways. This is why someone may believe one of these sentences to be true, but not the other, even though Jake Brancatella and the Muslim metaphysician are co-referring terms. As we can see, propositions are intentional. Mental entities such as thoughts and beliefs exhibit this unique feature of intentionality. Our thoughts and beliefs are about things in distinct ways. Entities that are purely physical and lack mentality, such as cars, tables, and chairs, are not intrinsically about anything at all. Since propositions are intrinsically intentional, and so are mental entities such as thoughts, they are the perfect candidates to be propositions. Unless we have some independent reasons to think otherwise, we should regard propositions as mental entities. Now, if propositions are best understood as mental entities that can be true or false, and at least one necessary truth exists, then a necessary intellect must exist. This is because thoughts cannot be had apart from minds. And since all humans are contingent, this means that humans, as well as their human thoughts, are not going to qualify as necessary propositions. We need something which is necessary itself. We need a necessary mind that could not fail to exist to account for the existence of necessary truths. I think that Aron should accept one more uncomfortable truth, i.e., the existence of a necessary intellect that is the creator of all. It may be hard for him to accept, but in the words of Aron himself, and I quote, truth matters more than whatever we would rather believe. بل نقذف بالحق على الباطل فيدمغه فإذا هو زاهق ولكم الويل مما تصفون. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to Aron's rebuttal and the rest of this debate.
Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Aron for his 13-minute opening statement as well. Aron, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. My experience, believers hate nothing more than the burden of proof, and that's why they try to redefine what evidence means so that it is no longer a fact that indicates. Because they can't give you any facts, not to point their way, so they give arguments instead of evidence, essentially word games trying to define their God into existence, with erroneous or fallacious assumptions built into most of them. If you ever look at a list of logical fallacies, you might notice that every one of them has been used as an argument for God, and in my experience, every argument for God involves at least one logical fallacy and usually more than one. And as I'm sure we will both demonstrate in our upcoming discussion, at which time I will claim that as one of many facts and evidence in my case against God. Of course, the first fact in evidence against God is that there is no evidence for God. We have to start there because logically, having no reason to believe something is a pretty good reason not to believe it, especially when such is neither probable nor even possible. We don't get to say that anything is possible because we know too many things that are not. A cow cannot jump over the moon, for example. That's not just improbable, that's physically impossible. In order to say whether something is possible, there must be a precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that such possibility exists. You don't have that for gods or ghosts or demons or souls or for magical enchantments like blessings or curses. So not only is none of that evident, it's not even a possibility to consider. Believers can't even give a consistent definition of what their God is supposed to be. Neuroscientists understand the mind to be an emergent property of the brain. So the notion of a disembodied mind is nonsense, as Jake just pointed out himself. And it's contradicted by Scripture as well. Because while modern theologians have contrived some lofty exaggerations of what they've built their God up to be, let's not forget God's humble beginnings in ancient mythology. The Bible tells us that God walks, talks, eats, turns his head, waves his hand, shows his backside, and cheats at wrestling. It says that Adam, Abraham, and Moses all spoke to God face to face, and that 70 of the elders of Israel were allowed to look upon God in physical form. But whether God has a body or not, there's no explanation given for how this God even could exist, much less how it does anything. And the sacred fables all say ridiculous things, like how he created the first man with a golem spell, while he created everything else with an incantation, speaking everything out of nothing, abracadabra. Just like so many pagan gods did, like the Native American god Coyote, who made the mountains and the rivers and who put the salmon into the rivers. There's no explanation for how he made or put anything or how gods do anything. It's all a process of PFM, better known as pure fucking magic. Then there's the fact that it doesn't matter which faith we focus on. No religion can show that they're any more accurate than every other faith. The same goes for their scriptures, too. The Jewish Torah, the Christian Gospels, the Quran of Islam, the Kitab-i-Aqdas of Baha'u'llah, the Avestas of Zarathustra, the Adi Granth of the Sikhs, the Hindu Vedas and the Mahabharata's Bhagavad Gita, the Book of Mormon, and the Urantia book have all been declared by some devotees to be the absolute truth and the revealed word of the one true God, even when they can't agree on who or what that God is. Everyone knows that every word of all these supposedly sacred tomes was scribbled by scribes. Mere fallible men who obviously had no idea what they were talking about, because every supposedly God-breathed doctrine is full of errors. For example, everything the Bible or the Quran says about the Earth in relation to the rest of the cosmos is flat Earth cosmology from the Iron Age. So they couldn't have been written or given or dictated by any gods or angels because they would have known better. We have sufficient evidence in science to prove that Adam and Eve are genetically impossible and were not real people. The global population cannot have been derived from a single couple, not 6,000 years ago, nor even 600,000 years ago. We descend from a particular population of apes, numbering several thousand strong at least, who set out on the road to our lineage at least a few million years ago. To be clear, this is a matter of objectively demonstrable scientific fact, not assumptions. Physical anthropologists and paleoprimatologists can show how humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestry is an objectively verifiable fact in the absolute sense that it doesn't change, meaning that it will not be corrected by new information. It's not just a probability, it's a certainty. Cultural anthropologists can also show how we know that the tale of the Garden of Eden is nothing more than a fable composed of several tropes and characters showing the apparent influence of elder religions in neighboring regions. It's only possible truth depends on metaphorical interpretations. There is absolutely no truth of any part of that story otherwise. Archaeologists assure us that the same goes for the Tower of Babel and even the Exodus. Historians agree that Moses never existed. He was a legendary character, but he wasn't real. Then paleontologists, geologists, geneticists, and practically any other earth and life scientist can disprove the global flood of Noah's Ark. The Bible and the Quran both imply that this was a global event, flooding the whole world and that everyone alive today is a descendant of Noah. But we have literally tons of rock-solid proof from many independent fields of study that it's just a story. It never happened, not the way it says in anyone's scriptures. It's not just that it couldn't have happened, but even if it could have, by some flurry of miracles, we still have an overwhelming preponderance of evidence to prove that it didn't happen. So the Bible and the Quran are both wrong, not just about that, but practically everything else of importance too. It's not just that all the scriptures are laughably wrong about practically everything, scientifically and historically, ethically and morally. It's that outside of these assorted doctrines, we see that the fact that belief in any God doesn't have any apparent impact on the person's morality. Instead, and even worse, there are criminal studies showing that the more religious one is, the more likely they are to be bigoted, intolerant, and abusive, favoring violent vengeance over rehabilitation or restitution. Comparative analysis of child molesters even decades ago showed that statistically, the more religious an abuser is, the more abusive they were, with more and younger victims. Whereas programs like the Clergy Project reveal that when people stop believing, they become more tolerant, more curious, liberal, less bigoted, and judgmental. And why are so many people leaving religion? Because of the fact that all the world's religions combined can't even show that there's a there, that there is anything supernatural at all. There's no discernible, verifiable truth to any supernatural claims, just subjective impressions and baseless assumptions. Any claim of facts in evidence of the divine or of anything supernatural always turn out to be nothing but frauds, falsehoods, and fallacies, which ought to matter to you if the truth matters to you at all, if you want to understand knowledge as distinguished from make-believe. Yet all the major religions require faith instead, where you're supposed to believe whatever they said simply because they said so. I think all of us would agree that faith healers and self-described exorcists are famously fraudulent, yet we ignore that Jesus was running the same game as they are, just another superstitious cult leader. The people who have dedicated decades of their lives to the study of near-death experiences have lost faith even in that, coming away admitting that there's still no substance to it after all this time, over half a century, and there's still very few cases without a clear explanation. That's not what they predicted 50 years ago. And the failure there, according to all of the neuroscientists, neurophilosophers, and brain surgeons I've spoke to, is the fact that there's no support for mind-body dualism, neither in neuroscience nor even in philosophy. It's not just that there's no evidence right where it should be, right where it would be if we had an animating immortal spirit. It's that we have so much evidence against it to confidently conclude that we don't have souls. Without an immortal supernatural soul, there can't be an afterlife, thus no heaven or hell, and without them, the notion of a God is largely moot. This doesn't make a lot of difference in Islam, since the Quran talks about a physical heaven where our bodies will be reanimated such that we will still require food even in hell, where roughly 80% of the world would spend eternity if Islam was correct. Unfortunately, Islam is not correct. There is no hell, and God doesn't operate an invisible hotel in the expanse of the non-existent firmament either. Regardless what God or religion it is, hell is inconsistent with God. If there was a God, there still wouldn't be a hell, because no God would allow it. If we are to believe what the scriptures say about God being infinitely merciful and just, those two are already in contradiction with each other, and both contradict the description of God as a righteous judge, having wisdom or love or any of that, which contradicts everything required to torture everyone mercilessly, relentlessly, forever and ever over a thought crime. The Quran repeatedly says that simply believing equals doing good and that not believing equals doing evil. So Islam is just like Christianity in that we are not judged on morality, but on gullibility, because we are judged and damned forever over what or whether we believed. Hell would still be grossly unjust even if we knew God existed, but as you've seen here today, we have not given evidence to compel belief, so hell becomes exponentially worse. No God would want or allow something so petty and vindictive. And such is obviously just an excuse that theologians made up so that those who didn't believe in the impossible promise of a posthumous reward might believe in the threat of a fate worse than death if they don't believe. For the purpose, of course, being the manipulation of the masses toward the ultimate goal of enriching and empowering the clergy. This is only circumstantial evidence against God, but it's worth mentioning. This is especially bad in Islam because the Quran says a few times that God decides who will believe and who won't. So we don't even have free will. Instead, we submit to God's will, as if we're just his playthings, and he's going to punish us for whatever he forced us to do. Thus, belief in God is inconsistent with both free will and objective morality, which is a contradiction of two of the most popular reasons believers cite for why they believe and why we should believe. And note that their most popular reasons for believing have nothing to do with evidence. Again, as always, belief is assumed in lieu of evidence and maintained despite all evidence to the contrary. Evidence is a body of facts, objectively verifiable data indicating one conclusion or eliminating another. If the truth is what the facts are, then there is no significant or spiritual truth in any religious doctrine, but there are a hell of a lot of lies in all of them. Thus, we have nothing at all to imply that there even could be a God, but ample evidence everywhere to show that God is a fantasy, phantasm, nothing more than wishful thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Aron. We'll kick it into the rebuttal section. Jake, got the timer set for you, and the floor is all yours for 6 minutes.
Okay, so what we just saw from Aaron was a whole lot of nothing, not much evidence or even arguments in his own terminology against the existence of God. Instead, we got a whole bunch of how scriptures are flawed, which is irrelevant actually to the debate because we're not debating scripture here today. We are debating whether or not there is evidence for or against God. Disproving scripture or disproving that human beings have souls or whatever else was presented is very interesting and maybe could be another subject of a debate some other time, but has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not God exists. So I've made note of a bunch of things that Aaron said, and I'll try to get through at least some of them. If not, we'll go through them hopefully during the open discussion section. So, I mean, he says there's no evidence for God. I think that I've presented some, right? I presented an argument, and he doesn't think that arguments are actually evidence. Well, when presenting an argument, you're supposed to give evidence for the premises in the argument, right? So to say that arguments are opposed to evidence as if they're two entirely different things just gets the whole equation wrong about what arguments are supposed to be. Arguments are supposed to have premises, and we're supposed to have evidence in support of those premises. Most of my premises in my argument, I think, to be pretty straightforward, and I don't think anybody would deny. And the two that are somewhat controversial, which I think the argument hinges on, I did provide evidence for them. Now, it's interesting. Arn, is not very much into philosophy, and this is by his own admission, so I'm not like taking a shot at him at all. But he made a philosophical claim, actually several, but one that I noted was he said there must be prior precedents to say that something is possible. Well, what's the claim for that? I mean, what's the evidence for that? That's just a philosophical assertion that there must be prior precedents to say that something is possible. Where are you getting this idea or theory of modality from that we must have a prior example of something to determine whether or not something else is possible? That's a philosophical claim. That's not a scientific claim. Um, he made this big to do about magic and many attacks on the Quran and various scriptures like the Bible and whatever other scriptures he mentioned. But as I mentioned earlier, any claims made against the Quran, whether it be about the existence of Adam or claims about evolution and his understanding of the Quran rejecting that, those are all interesting topics, but they're not the subject of this debate. Even if evolution were true, it doesn't disprove God. It wouldn't disprove God whatsoever. So, I mean, it's interesting. He notes all of these things, which are arguments and evidence in support of some other thesis, but they're not arguments and evidence in support of the thesis that God does not exist. He made, these comments about religion entailing violence and abuse and criminality and, hatred towards others and all this kind of stuff. You're not actually liberal. But Aron has made a living of claiming that religious people and people of faith are the most dishonest people, right, that is in existence. So it's really interesting to me because from his side, there's a whole lot of hostility, right? And this so-called liberal, care bear, loving attitude, I don't see it exhibited in Aron and his likes. He made a lot of comments about truth. I don't know how much of that you guys caught. He said truth are whatever the facts are. He said if the truth matters at all, blah, 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 blah. And in preparation for this debate, I actually took the time out to listen to hours worth of Aron Ra's material. And he's a guy who constantly brings up the truth. He cares so much about the truth. But he never actually clearly tells us what the truth is. And that's why I've provided an argument from the very concept of necessary truth to the existence of God. And I hope that we'll get some engagement from that in his rebuttal time. I know that he didn't have time to because that was his opening statement. But I really look forward to that because there's so much I think, maybe he doesn't want to accept it, but that he has to say about truth that I would actually agree with. I just think that that entails other things and that he's not willing to accept that I, of course, am. He said there's no support for mind-body dualism. Again, totally irrelevant because as a Muslim, you don't have to be a mind-body dualist, right? So it has nothing to even disproving Islam, let alone disproving that a God or a creator exists. Let's see. He also made another claim, another false claim about Islam that we are judged based on what we believe. Yeah, partially. We're partially judged on what we believe. But it's not as if you can just believe in God and believe in the existence of the Prophet Muhammad and that the Quran is the last and final revelation. And then you can just go out and do whatever you want and God doesn't care and there's going to be no consequence in this life or the next. That's certainly not the Islamic position. It may be a version of Christianity, but it's certainly not Islam. I think my time is up.
Thank you very much. We'll kick it to Aron for 6 minutes as well.
I provided a list of facts and evidence against God, which was precisely the point of the debate today. Faith asserts baseless speculation as if it was a matter of fact, but science doesn't prove things like Jake says it does. Instead, it adheres to what is supported and what is not. And whatever is not supported doesn't warrant serious consideration. Jake failed to list a single fact that indicates one position or eliminates another. So I provided evidence and he did not. We can't say that something is true until or unless we can show the truth of it to know whether something is true, as we honestly should, before we assert that it is. So when it comes to how do we know whether something is possible, we have to have some way to know that it is possible. And my analysis shows that in every case where we can say that something is possible, it's not because we just resign that anything is possible. No, we have a precedent that established that it's possible. Or we have a parallel situation which implies that a similar thing could happen in this case. Or we have a verified phenomenon which is as yet unexplained, but nonetheless gives the indication that, yeah, this must be possible because there it is. So that's where I came up with the precedent and parallel and verified phenomenon indicating that such possibility exists. And as far as the other argument, when I was on his show with him, when he told me that he's looking for a necessary being, and he confirmed for me that being didn't have to mean being as I understood it, that a being doesn't have to be an entity, that it can just be an inanimate object, I could see where he was going with this and the weakness of the game he was playing. And I wanted to play along as much as I possibly could. Because for me, if we don't have anything coming from nothing, or if everything isn't coming from nothing, then obviously if we have a universe with something in it, there must have been something to start with. So as according to the first law of thermodynamics, material energy, right? So matter cannot be created or destroyed. I knew what he was going to do with this, so I suggested that the necessary being would be dead unconscious material, knowing that he would crow victory, that dead unconscious material counts as his living immaterial consciousness, that it doesn't bother him, that he's going to completely contradict himself. My problem in not being able to get to the punchline on this was that they wanted me to speak authoritatively about a subject I don't even study, which was cosmogony. In which case I said, it doesn't matter what my uneducated opinion is. So I have to defer to the experts. I recently had an interview with Sean Carroll. Sean Carroll in that interview said that there could just have easily been nothing as something. And it was like, well, if you want an authoritative statement, that's not going to come from me. That's going to have to come from Sean Carroll. And then they argued this. I thought this was funny when they said, well, it doesn't matter what the experts say. What do you believe? I only have an uneducated opinion, so it literally doesn't matter what I believe. We're talking about objective truth here, not subjective beliefs.
Are you able to speak closer to the mic? If you put the mic right in front of you, we're having trouble.
Sure, no worries. So, I'm the one presented evidence. That was the purpose of the debate. I'm the only one that presented facts and evidence. He got nothing.
Thank you very much. We'll go into the next section. This is the 60-minute open discussion.
Right.
Ready? The floor is yours.
Okay, so I have a question for Aron because you're saying I didn't present any facts or evidence. What do you make of my argument that I presented? Can you explain what my argument was and what you take issue with?
No, I can't explain what your argument was. I just predicted that you were going to use a word game to try to define your God into being because that's all you ever do. You've never presented evidence in any of your presentations. You think that arguments are evidence just like every apologist does because they don't have any evidence to point to. So you have to come up with a word game wherein dead unconscious material becomes your living immaterial consciousness. So it's anti-logic.
Yeah, so you're trying to convince me and everybody else here that's watching both here and live that I didn't present any arguments or evidence.
I don't need to convince them. They can just play it back.
But yet you yourself are admitting that you cannot even render my argument. You have no idea what I even presented. So it's as if you weren't listening. You came here with the assumption in the debate, whether you're correct or not, but we wouldn't know it because you can't recall what I even said.
In the previous argument, all I can do is understand that this is where you're going, that you think that if I believe subjectively, if I personally, without any education in the field, if I believe that there must have been something, that somehow disproves God. That's not a valid argument. And that's all you do. So I've come to expect that you're not going to bring anything. So I will bring facts that you won't be able to dispute, and these are going to matter. This is where science looks at what is supported. Okay, here's the support that I've given. There's no possibility of God. There's no indication of God. And all we have is a bunch of facts and evidence to indicate that there is not a God, that God is a fictional character, that God is largely exaggerated, whatever. And this is why religious apologists like yourself have to come up with these contrived arguments to try to play a word game to define your God into existence without evidence.
Okay, well, since you can't render my argument, right?
I listened when you went over it again. I'm like, what is he talking
Okay,
about?
so maybe we can go through it step by step. Otherwise, we're gonna have nothing to talk about other than you asserting
I
that.
think we've got
that
plenty to talk about.
I didn't present anything, and I never present anything. Well, I'm claiming that I did present something.
I know that is your
So
claim.
can we at least
You also
start-
claimed you owned me by walking into what I'm thinking. You were trying to set a word game trap for me, and I'm trying to reset it for you. But then, neither way, it wouldn't have worked either way. If I believed that nothing was necessary, or if I believed that something was necessary, either way, it doesn't matter which option of that I take. It still doesn't establish a God, and I can't believe that you actually think that it would. It bewilders me. Your necessary being that you will accept literally dirt.
You're going back to a previous discussion and you're trying to rehash the whole thing. I mean, I'm happy to have that discussion. I mean, maybe we can have it after the debate. I'm happy to have it, but it's not all that relevant for
All right. So
today
do you
what we're
have
presenting here.
a fact in evidence, something that indicates
Okay,
one
so-
position or eliminates another?
So here's my point. Yeah, and
Objectively verifiable data
And
now.
actually, we did. If you listen to my presentation, we actually agreed on what evidence is, right?
Okay.
So we're agreement on something. Like let's try to get some common ground.
Okay.
I agree with you on that. Now, I attempted to present certain facts, which I then gave evidence for those claims. Now, I'm happy to go through the premises one by one, right? But I don't know how much of it you even understood because you're claiming that I basically didn't say anything at all.
Well, help me out here. Where was the objectively verifiable data that positively indicates one available position over any other? That wasn't just a logical quandary, but an actual objectively verifiable data.
It's not a logical quandary because I even in my premises I gave statements from you regarding what you said about truth.
Mhm.
I mean, you've made so many presentations about truth. Some of them I found very interesting and helpful, right? So I'm actually using an argument from necessary truth to prove that a necessary mind exists, not some inanimate object or dirt or whatever else you're talking about. So let's get to truth because you want to talk so much about truth and you're a truth seeker and faith is against truth and religious
Correct.
people hate truth. So let's try to figure out what truth is, right? And then see what that entails.
The
That's
truth
my
is what the
argument
facts
we're
are.
attempting to do.
The truth is what the facts are. So
Okay,
what do you got?
So I quoted you. This is a direct quote from you, and maybe you don't agree with it anymore. I don't know, but this was what you said. You said, let me see here, because I don't want to misquote you. On the other hand, I'm actually trying to listen to what you have to say. Sorry, am I talking too loud?
No, it's not you. You're good.
Okay, Aron, so you said, and I thought this was a clear statement, that's why I included it in my presentation. You said reality itself is not truth, but statements about reality can be if they're true.
Right.
I agree with that. Okay, so that's what you're saying. So this microphone, right? This microphone is not truth. But if I make a statement about the microphone, which is true, then that statement is true, correct? Okay, so we're in agreement. Now, my claim is that means that you think that sentences are what have the property of truth. Is that your position?
When you make a statement, and you have to be able to show that it is correct. So you can't just make a statement and then tell me that it's true until you prove it wrong, because I've heard that plenty. So I happened across a brilliant quote by Abraham Lincoln that I absolutely loved. He said, "It's an established maxim in morals that he who makes an assertion without knowing whether it is true or false is guilty of falsehood, and the accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him." Which means you can't say something is true until you can show that it is true. You're welcome to say that you believe something, but you can't state it as a fact, because the moment you start claiming facts that are not facts and pretending to know things you don't know, which is what faith is all about, then that's called lying.
Yeah, okay. So, but we're in agreement here that there's a distinction, and in philosophy, right, the distinction you made is between a truth maker and a truth bearer. When you say, if we can't show that something is true, that's the thing that makes it true. In this case, right, if I say that this black microphone is on the table, what makes it true, the truth maker or the fact of the matter in your terminology, is that the microphone actually exists. It's here in
Objectively
front of me.
verifiable data.
Correct, right? So this is a what we call the truth maker. So we're agreeing things that exist in reality are the truth makers. They're the things that make something true. The truth bearer is the thing that we refer to is the truth. We don't say the microphone is true. We say, as you said, the statement about the microphone being on the table is true. Okay? So what I'm saying is your claim is that sentences, this is the entailment of what you're saying, and if you think I'm misrepresenting you, you can correct me. But as far as I understand you, you're saying that existent things, right, as you're saying, empirical, verifiable data, facts, okay, that's what I'm saying is the truth maker, the things that make what is true, right? We don't just come up with things on our own out of nowhere. I can't just tell you there's an elephant in the room if there's no elephant in the room, right? So the fact that this microphone is on the table, that's what makes it true. But when I make that statement about the microphone, that's the truth bearer. The sentence in terms of how you're describing it is what has the property of true or false. The microphone doesn't have a property of true or false. In this case, the sentence about the microphone does.
Right. Is it a true statement?
Well, in this case, I mean, I hope you would agree.
Yeah, the fact.
It's true that the microphone's on the table, right?
Yeah, and in one sense, we could say that truths exist that are as yet undiscovered. But I mean, the fact that your microphone sits on the desk is not a truth in itself. It's only the statement you make about it, whether we can show that it's true or not. Yeah. Can we show that it's true? Yes, we can.
Okay, so in this case,
there we go.
We can show that it's true. And when I utter the statement here to you, this black microphone is on the table. Is that statement true? You would say it's true, correct?
Yes, objectively verifiable.
You would say it's true because we can verify it. But what I'm trying to get to is you're saying that the sentence, when Jake utters the sentence, the microphone is on the table, that the sentence itself has the property of truth, meaning the sentence is what is true or false, and the microphone is what determines whether or not it's true or false. Okay? But I gave an argument, which maybe you didn't catch, so I'm happy to present it again. But my argument was that sentences, you're kind of going in my direction, but you're not there yet. Sentences cannot be the primary bearers of truth. Why? I believe that sentences can be true or false, but so can beliefs. Sentences and beliefs have things in common, which is propositional content. It's the content of the sentence or the belief. I can say that the microphone is black and is on the table, and I can write that same sentence down on a piece of paper. Now, if I write that same sentence in English down on a piece of paper and I utter it, if I speak it, how many truths are being expressed? One or many?
I would have to evaluate it. And we were talking about whether you're making a factual statement, if you say that you believe something, you're welcome to say whatever the hell if you want it. But the moment you express it as a fact, now the burden of proof is on you.
Yeah, but I'm trying to use a simple fact that we would agree with for the sake of the discussion. I'm saying, and I'm
as long as I can verify,
the microphone is on the table.
Okay,
this is true.
As long as I can verify that what you said is true, then I have no contest.
Okay, so in this case, the microphone is on the table. This is true. When I say that, and if I were to now type it on my computer or write it down on a piece of paper and hold up the paper and say it out loud, how many truths are being expressed? One or more than one?
Probably more than one.
More than one. So if I write on a piece of paper, the microphone is black and on the table, and I speak it out, I'm speaking multiple truths?
If we can verify it, yeah, the color of the plate, the position of the thing, the fact that it exists, a number of other things.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying take the same sentence, okay? I say the black microphone is on the table. Then I write that same sentence out in English on a piece of paper. That sentence matches verbatim what I'm saying. In the case of the sentence that is written on the table and what I said, how many truths are being expressed? There's only one truth being expressed. It's the same sentence. One is verbal, one is being spoken, one
Color,
is
the
being written down. I can
definition of the item, what it is, where it is, all of that. There's a number of different things you said that are verifiably true. Beliefs can be true too.
yeah.
It can be, but you can't declare something that you don't know to be true. You can't say that it's true if you don't know that it is. All the time, I hear people say, well, I know for a fact there's a God, except you don't know that, and it's not a fact. If it was a fact, it'd be objectively verifiable data. We'd both be able to show that. So one of the challenges that I made earlier this year was when people tell me all the time that they present evidence and I ignore it. Well, okay, well then let's show me something. Show me objectively verifiable data. Show me something that we can both confirm is actually true. That is also indicative of your position.
I'm
Right?
trying to.
Okay, well, why
Yeah,
don't
so-
you
so-
go ahead and be the very first person in my 25 years or so
Okay.
to present something that's verifiably, we can both show is verifiably true and positively indicative of your situation. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm trying to do that with the example of the microphone. I'm using a mundane example,
Okay.
which we both agree. We're not going to sit here and debate. Oh, Jake, no, it's actually white. You're wrong. And no, we're not debating about that, right? It's something very simple. Now, if you want to get technical and say, well, when you say the microphone is on the table, well, you're saying that there's a microphone, that it's black, it's on the table. I don't care about how many truths are within that one sentence. I'm saying to you, when I say that sentence in English and I write it down on paper, or I could write it down in Spanish, the same sentence, how many truths are being expressed? Whatever amount of truths being expressed, both when I say it in English and Spanish, is going to be the same number.
As long as it contains the same number of bits of information that we have already confirmed, yeah, it would be the same.
Correct. So my point to you is that when I say something, if I say something in English, or I speak in sign language, or I speak in another language, the same idea, okay, that means the same truth is being expressed, which also means that the sentences themselves are not the primary bearers of truth. They're not the thing which is the primary bearer of truth, because in that case, the truth is singular, is one, and the sentences or expressions of that truth are many. They're not the same thing.
I'm a little confused as to why you turned it into whether whether you can say that a statement is true, you can show the truth of it, right? There's the truth of it, but it's not. Is it the primary bearer of truth, or is it the fact that we can verify it, not being the primary bearer of truth?
No, because as I said, there's a distinction between what makes something true and the thing that is true, which we agreed with.
And the thing that makes something true is that we can verify the fact of it,
Yeah, its existence.
right?
Yeah.
And
which
what
we're
color it
agreeing.
is, and all of that.
We're agreeing on that.
Okay.
The only difference is, so we're agreeing on what makes something true. The facts
Okay.
of the matter, the existence of the microphone, and whatever it is that we can verify. We're agreeing that that's what makes something true. We're differing on, and I'm agreeing with you that a sentence can be true or false. I can say the microphone is black, or I can say it's white, and that would not be true. So we also agree that sentences and beliefs can be true or false. However, what I'm saying is, because sentences can have multiple expressions which are not identical, and yet the same truth is being expressed, that means there's something more fundamental than the sentence itself, which I'm arguing for is a proposition.
Okay, so you're making the statement that your microphone exists and what color it is, and what position it is, and all of these things are independently verifiable. And so we can now verify its position, its identity, its coloration, all of these. These are all different things that we can show to be true.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that the sentence is the primary bearer of truth. It's the fact that we can verify it that makes it the primary bearer of truth. Is it verifiable?
Yeah.
Therefore, we're there. Okay, so thank you for proving your microphone exists. Can you go on and do that for God?
No, because you're skipping back every time. You've already agreed with me that the sentence is what. Do you believe this microphone is true?
Well,
Did you say that?
it's not a belief.
Okay. Is
So-
this microphone true?
The reason I have to make the distinction is because I argue with believers. And I've found that over my experience that if I say that I believe something, it means that this is what I think is truest or closest to the truth, but I don't know it because I can't show it. That's what belief means to me. But to people who call themselves believers, it seems that what they mean by that is make believe. They're going to believe this regardless. They're going to convince themselves. So it's a very different context. I try not to use the word belief for that reason.
Okay, we're fine. This microphone is on the table, correct? Now, I'm saying, is this microphone true?
Is the microphone true?
Yeah. It doesn't make
No.
any sense. That's the whole
Right.
point. So that means you're making a distinction between what
Whether the
makes something
statement is true.
and the statement.
Right.
Now, I'm
Is
saying
the
to you,
statement true? The
I'm
thing
giving an
itself
argument.
isn't true.
I'm giving an argument
Okay.
that I agree with your position to a certain extent, that there's a distinction between the sentence and the thing that exists that makes that sentence true. We agree. But I'm saying there's something more fundamental than the sentence because, and my argument is, one of my arguments is, that you can have multiple sentences either in the same language or different language, or you can have a belief which has the same content as the sentence. And all of those can be true, yet none of them are identical. So what do the beliefs and the sentences on paper and the sentences spoken, what do they have in common which is true?
If the statement, whether it's written or spoken, has the same amount of information and it's verifiably accurate in each bit of information, then I don't have an issue with it. You can show that it's true. You can show the truth of it. Therefore, the statement is true. Every part of the statement is true. We can verify every part of the statement.
Yeah, so but
Okay.
I'm saying it's the content. The content, or what you're saying is the information, is what matters. Because the sentence, if I say that the microphone is on the table, and I say that in English, and then I repeat it in Spanish, those two sentences are not the same, yet they express the same truth.
The same pieces of information as I just said so many times.
Correct. So then that means there's something.
I'm glad
more
we agree on this, so we can
sentences.
continue arguing it for another 25 minutes or so, the part that we agreed on.
No, because what I'm saying is, are you agreeing with me that there's something more fundamental, which is true, more fundamental than sentences? And I'm saying that's a proposition.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
I'm
so
saying,
that's where we're different.
okay, I don't see where the difference is. If you make a statement and you're making an assertion and you can't back the assertion, you're telling me that, as so many creationists do, they always want to cite a fact, that dinosaur soft parts prove the Earth is young. No, it doesn't. Here's all the reasons why. But you just assert the fact, and we're supposed to accept it because you say so.
Okay, so
No, in this case, you're actually giving information for your God, but you're giving information for your microphone that we can both verify is correct. Okay, good. I'm glad you can defend your microphone.
Oh, well, that's not what I'm doing, but we'll move on from that point. Let me explain another way to try to get at what I'm trying to say. I used in my first premise of my argument, I said either the law of non-contradiction is true or it's not. Let's take an example like the law of non-contradiction. Do you believe it's true?
Again, I wouldn't say that I believe
Okay, I'm
it.
sorry about the word belief.
Yeah.
But I mean it in the context of.
To my understanding, yes.
Okay, so the law of contradiction is true. Was it true before any sentence existed?
Okay. We're only arguing about the truth of the sentence. As I said before, the existence of the thing is not a truth. It's whether the statement is true that makes it truth.
Yeah,
So are you speaking truth or are you not speaking truth? That's the issue. So if you're saying things that you can't show to be true, then you're not speaking truth.
Yes, so now I'm asking you about the law of non-contradiction. We both agree it's true. Was it true before either one of us or any human being ever said the law of non-contradiction is true? Was the law of non-contradiction always true?
Again, as I told you before, repeatedly, there can be things that are true that we don't yet know. The issue is we cannot say that they're true until we can show that they're true.
But they're already true.
Until we can show the truth of it, as I said.
But they're already true before we say they're true.
Yes, but we can't say that they're true until we know that they're true. So we have to have a reason to say, and we have to be able to show the truth of the statement. Does anybody feel like we've just been round and round?
You're proving my point, and that was
I'm proving his point. Okay.
Yeah, because that was one of my other arguments when you said
we're in total agreement. He's proving my point. I'm proving his.
You said that there are truths, which I quoted you, and you said again here, which I agree with. There are truths that have not been discovered yet. That means that truth exists prior to your sentence.
In other words, you can have statements as yet unuttered that may well be true. But if you say a thing and you can't show the truth of it, that's a lie. That's technically a lie. So when you say, and that's what all faith is, asserting empty speculation as if it's a matter of fact, pretending to know things you don't know. Both of those are lies. That's what faith is, but both of those are lies.
Yeah.
So listen, I went over law of non-contradiction. Same thing. We can go through many different examples of truths. You're saying there are truths that are not have been discovered, right? Okay, I agree with you. Where are they?
But if they're unspoken, if they haven't been stated.
So they're not true until they're spoken?
How would we have a sentence be true before it was uttered?
But that's my point. How are you saying that there are truths that have not been discovered yet? That's implying that language implies that there's a truth out there that has not been uttered yet. It's waiting to be uttered.
So
It exists.
So there are sentences we could say that could be true, or that we could show the truth of it, and they would be true, but we haven't uttered those sentences yet. Does everybody remember when we went over this? Like, I feel like it's been about 3 or 4 times now.
It might be 10 more by the end of it. But go ahead.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself a truth seeker?
Yes.
What are you seeking? To utter the correct sentence? Is that what you're seeking? Because by what you're saying there's truth. There's something out there that's waiting to be discovered and waiting to be realized. So you are affirming that truth, which you're not really grasping. Truth exists independently of the sentence. The sentence expresses the truth.
Once again, the truth is what the facts are, but you can't state what the truth is if you don't know what the facts are. You can't show the truth of it.
We're not disagreeing about that part.
I'm glad. Can we get past it?
We're disagreeing on whether truth exists independently of sentences. And I'm giving you an argument to show that truth exists independently of sentences.
Nonsense.
How is it nonsense? You yourself, you said you're a truth seeker. What are you seeking?
One is that I won't say things are true unless I can show that they're true. That's part of being a truth seeker. I don't want to believe anything that isn't evident.
What's out there?
I will tentatively accept whatever that can be shown to be true as best as it can be. And the moment that it turns out that my information may not have been as reliable as I thought it was, or that it should have been, or as it was reported to be, or if I foolishly read something off of an Onion article and didn't check it first, and I make a comment on that, thinking I've checked my stats, well, I need to correct myself. And the moment that I see that something is not as well supported as I thought it was, you don't have to disprove whatever position I had. As soon as I realized there wasn't good enough reason to believe in it in the first place, I've already stopped believing in it.
Yeah, that's fine. My point
And of course, what I mean by that is my original statement that I think this is true, but I don't know it because I can't show it. So I'm not make believing like faith does.
Okay. So God does not exist. Is that true?
Evidently,
It's true.
God evidently does not exist.
Was it always true?
Was it always true that God evidently does not exist?
Yes.
Or is it evidently true that God never existed, or was there never evidence that God exists?
Virtue of someone uttering that sentence.
Help. I mean, some kind of weird ass Twilight Zone.
How do you not understand that?
Because again, the same thing we've been going over the last 20 minutes. If you make a statement, if you tell me that God exists, and you do, you tell me that God exists, you don't have fact one to back that up. You claim this knowledge you can't verify. So your statement is not true. So your claim that God exists is not evidently true. We need to have the evidence, which you refuse to present, which was the purpose of this debate. And this is the reason I agreed to it. I would love to see a religious apologist be forced by the definition of the debate to cough up evidence. I knew you wouldn't even try, but you.
So I didn't try.
No.
So maybe it's that I am trying and you just don't understand what I'm presenting.
No. No.
You're clearly presenting evidence.
Where was the fact?
I'm clearly by your own admission, and you don't see it. That's the funny part of it.
So where is the objectively verifiable data?
You're affirming, sir, the existence of truth that has not been discovered yet, which
And
means truth exists independently of your sentence, and you can't grasp that.
Because I've corrected it so many times, and you can't grasp the repeated corrections.
The correction.
The statement, whether it's true or not, the thing it's the item sitting on the desk is not in itself a truth. The statement you might make about that could be true or it could be false. It could be baseless, which is the same thing as false. If you say something's true and you can't show the truth of it, it's baseless. Baseless has the same level of credibility, zero, as a statement that has already been proven wrong. So if you can't show the truth of it, it's not true. It has to be treated as if it's not. Even if you said something and you couldn't show that it's true, what if in reality it really was the case, but you're not able to say it? Then you're in the wrong because what you would call it a truth, but your statement about it is still false because you can't show it. You're claiming knowledge you don't have, which again is what faith is all about.
No, I'm claiming that truth exists independently of my sentence or anybody
Which
uttering it. And
contradicts what I've said
you're
so many
affirming that.
times.
You're
No,
affirming
I'm not. I'm contradicting that for the nth time.
Okay, so you're not truth seeking.
I am absolutely truth
What are
seeking.
you seeking?
Well, one, something's true, not what you're saying. So you can make the statement that the thing is there, and if we can verify that it's there, then you are justified in claiming that it is there. We have and it doesn't have to be absolute. A lot of people say, well, you can't prove absolutely, but no, I don't have to prove absolutely. Is it supported? Is it not? Is there a probability? Do we have 80% likelihood that this is true? Okay, very good. We have sufficient to believe it or to accept it, if you will. But the thing sitting there is not without us without us making a statement about it or knowing about it. The thing does not become a truth in itself. It's only what we say about it.
Okay, so
Is the statement true?
yeah. Do we create truth or do we discover it?
Again, when you can form the statement about it, then you can determine can I show the truth of what I'm saying? Is the statement therefore
But
true?
it wasn't
Is
true.
it therefore right? That it becomes so you're stating a truth. You have to discover whether it's true or not. But then you make the statement about it, and that becomes whether it's the truth is what the facts are. What is a fact? What is a fact? Objectively verifiable data. The truth is what the facts are, and is objectively verifiable data. So when you determine that a thing is objectively verified, here's the information about it. Now you make the statement: is that the truth? Yes, it's the truth. The thing existing is not in itself a truth. I've been over this, I don't know what, 10 times. You keep contradicting me while telling me that I'm agreeing with you. While telling me that I'm agreeing with you. You're disagreeing with me while telling me I'm agreeing with you.
That's the point we agreed on, right? We agreed about evidence. We agreed
Did
about
we?
the difference between a statement and the thing existing itself. There's only one additional claim I'm making.
Okay, where was the objectively verifiable data that was positively indicative of your God? Or
I'm presenting it right now. That truth exists independently of what you say.
okay, so you're wrong.
And you're saying that you're a truth creator.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. We find
It's true until Aron Ra says it. That's what you're saying.
new, and I think I hear by the laughing in the audience, they've seen through that.
That's exactly what you're saying.
No, it's exactly not. We discern truth. It's like the laws of nature. Laws of nature not given by a lawgiver. Laws of nature are what. So are you saying that laws of nature are given by a lawgiver?
What is the law of nature?
I was trying to explain that when you interrupted. It's a property of reality that we have determined as best we can. It's not always accurate because it was two guys in the 19th century that both came up with virtually similar, or the names were very similar. There was the law of biogenesis or there was the biogenetic law. Very different things with very similar names, and both of them happened to be wrong. But in general, it's a statement about the properties of something, which can be summarized in a single sentence or in a mathematical equation. These are what we call laws. I wish they hadn't called them laws because that makes every idiot out there think that there's a lawgiver. But it's just properties that we've discerned and then we've written them out. And if we can, we can confirm that it's correct. And by the way, both of these laws that the other guys had failed by some little detail. They could have been laws. They could have been good laws, but they wrote just a little bit too much so that it wasn't consistent anymore. So it's not that we create truth. We find whatever the truth is, and we phrase it so that the
Okay.
sentence is a
Did
truth.
we find the law of non-contradiction? Did we find it? Or was it true before we found it?
Again, you can have things that are true that haven't yet been discovered or described.
True before you say it's true.
But you can't, we're talking about whether you can justify making a statement about it before you know about it. You have to be able to, it becomes truth when the statement is true.
No. Yeah, see, this is the thing. You're saying, agreeing that it's only true if whatever you're saying is in line with reality. I'm agreeing with that. There has to
Okay.
be a correspondence. But I'm saying it's already true before I say it's true.
Right. There's many things that could be true, not truth, but true. You could make a statement about something that might be true, and if you say it before you know that it's true, well, then that's not truth.
Yeah,
That's a falsehood.
trying to say, you're saying that truth, right? What is it? Okay, what's the difference between truth and true? Because you just made a distinction there. What are you distinguishing?
We're discerning whether something is true, and we have to have a statement about that, a hypothesis, if you will,
Yeah.
that we can then verify whether this is correct according to the way we've described it. And if it is in line with what we've described, then that becomes truth. That is a true thing, and the statement about it is truth if it's true.
Right. So
Okay.
but then here you say that.
Right?
So on the one hand, this is where I'm seeing you're contradicting yourself with all due respect. Because on the one hand, you're saying that it's not truth until a sentence expresses the truth. But then on the other hand, you're saying you're a truth seeker as if truth already exists and is waiting to be verbalized. Those are contradictory. How do you not see that?
The laws of nature are not spelled out that way until we spell them out that way. But these are still some things that we discern, that we work out, that we determine whether this is true or not.
Yeah, I agree. But was it true before you discovered it?
There are many things that, as I said so many times, that could be true that we don't yet know yet. So,
I agree.
and then we determine what they are, and
There's
then
almost an
okay.
infinite amount of truths that we don't know about.
Maybe.
Right. So, and I'm saying to you, if all those truths exist before we say them, then our sentences about them are not the primary bearers of truth.
So when you say things that you cannot show to be true, that's a falsehood. Yes?
When you say things, what? Say it again.
Cannot show the truth of, that you cannot verify, that
Not necessarily,
are not
because
fact.
it could be true. You just can't verify it yet.
The accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him. It's still a falsehood. You've claimed knowledge you don't have.
If I say something that's true, right? But I can't prove that it's true.
Thus, you don't know that it's true. You have to have some
But
way
there's a
of.
difference between knowing it's true and it being true.
Is it? Knowledge is demonstrable. There's been many times that I would say that I know that I left my keys hanging up there, but then I find them in the bathroom or whatever and realize, nope, I misremembered. So that's possible. So you know what you can show.
Yeah, knowledge is different than truth.
Again,
knowledge is justified true belief.
Justified true, that means truth, right? So there's no difference then.
No, there is a difference.
Okay, what's the difference?
Has to be justified. That's what you're
saying all this time.
That's what knowledge is. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
True.
So you can't say something is true until you know that it's true.
You can't say it's knowledge until you can justify, meaning until you can show that it's true. Then it's
then it becomes knowledge. Yes, exactly.
Knowledge. But it could be true before I can.
There is a thing, right? There, as I said so many times already, it could be true, and you don't know that it's true, and got no business saying that it's true until you can show the truth of it.
Or it can also be true, and you say it's true, even though you can't demonstrate it, and you just get it correct by luck.
In which case, if I made an assertion of something that's true, I've claimed a fact that is not a fact, objectively verifiable data, and I'm now claiming to know things I don't know. That's the realm of faith, and it is also false. It's a falsehood.
It's false?
It's a falsehood because you've asserted something you don't know. You've said that it's true. You don't know that it's true. That makes it a false statement. And even if it were to happen to turn out to be correct,
it wouldn't be true. It wasn't true.
If you want to guess,
there's a fly behind that.
If you want to guess the number of, gumballs in a jar, you may guess correctly. But when you say that I know that this how many, you don't actually know that. You guessed correctly,
I'm not saying I know it.
But you're still lying about whether you know it.
I agree on that part, but
Okay.
I'm saying if I say there's a fly behind that curtain, and I have no idea that there is, and I go and I open it, and what do I know? A fly comes out.
So you've made
When
it,
I said it, did I know it? No, I did not know it, but
and
it was
therefore
still
shouldn't,
true. My
and
statement was still true.
except that it's still a falsehood because you're claiming knowledge you.
How is it falsehood?
I was answering the question when you interrupted the answer to ask the question. Because you're making an assertion you don't know to be true. That is claiming to know things you do not know. We call that lying. It wouldn't matter if you guessed correctly. You're still claiming to know things you don't know.
No, I'm not
You're
saying
still,
I know it.
you're still asserting baseless speculation as if it was a matter of fact. And if it turns out that there is a fly there, you've guessed the right number of gumballs or whatever,
Yeah.
you don't, there's the accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him.
I'm not saying I know there's a fly behind the curtain.
Okay,
I'm
if you
just
want to tell me that
asserting-
you believe that, then nobody cares.
I'm asserting that there is a fly behind the curtain. Now, if it turns out that when we open it up, there is one there, that was true.
That was true, but you were still false. Because you're
I
claiming.
was still false. How is it a falsehood?
How
if
many
it's true?
times do I have to explain the same damn thing to you? Because you're claiming
Your
knowledge
claim
you
makes
don't
absolutely
have.
no sense
The
whatsoever.
sense that my claim makes is that you're pretending to know things you don't know.
I never said I
wouldn't-
knew it. When did I say I knew it? I'm
If you
asserting
state
there's a fly behind
asserting,
there.
and what is an assertion, sir? You're stating as fact. It's not a
No, I'm
belief.
saying it's there. I'm not
Right.
saying I know
You're-
it's there.
Right. So you're asserting a fact that is not a
I'm not
fact.
saying I know it's there.
Oh, but you've asserted that
I
it
said
is
it's there.
And asserting that it is there establishes that you're now saying that it's a fact that it's there.
No, I'm not. I'm saying it's there. That's not saying that I know it's there.
That's what the assertion is. You're stating as a fact that it is there.
That's not the case.
But that is definitely the case.
Every time you assert something, you're saying that you know it's true.
If you say that you believe something, that's fine. You
Okay,
can
I
preface
believe.
it.
I believe
Okay.
that there's a fly there.
No, nobody cares. It's just a matter of what you can
could say
show.
nobody cares, but is it true?
Doesn't matter.
It
We're
does
only
matter,
interested. We're only
because
interested in what you can
I'm
show.
making a distinction between truth and knowledge.
As I have
Something
to.
is not a falsehood just because I don't know that it's actually true. If it's true independent if I know it or not.
One of the things that I have to explain to people constantly is that when they tell me, "Well, I believe blah blah blah," and I'm like, "I don't care what you believe. It doesn't matter what you believe. All that matters is why you believe it. What is the reason? Is the evidence valid? Is it justified? Does it actually indicate that conclusion? Is there a reason I should believe it or accept it as well? That's what matters, not what you believe. You assert whatever you like when you say that you believe it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But when you state as fact, there's a fly on the wall and there's no fly on the wall, or even if there is a fly on the wall behind another room and you couldn't have known that, in either case, you've made a false statement, claiming knowledge you don't have. And even if there was a fly on the wall,
knowledge.
you just stated a
Knowledge.
fact that is not a fact. What do you call when you call something a thing that is not the thing? Oh, that's a lie. Why do you not get
It's not a
that?
lie.
Because your faith. That's what it is. Because that's what
This has
faith.
nothing to do with faith. We're talking
Really?
about mundane things.
Faith is the assertion of baseless speculation as if it was a matter of fact. That's called
That's
lying.
your claim. That's your definition. I don't define faith that way.
I know
That's
you
your
don't define
claim.
it that way, but we can demonstrate
I'm
that it is
showing
that
you
way.
that there's a distinction between truth and knowledge. Okay, so let's move on because we're not going anywhere with that.
Clearly.
You believe that there are any necessary truths.
You have to ponder that. As you said, I study science. I don't care a lot about philosophy. Why? Because it's spinning wheels in
But
the
you
mud
care
where you
about
have to.
truth, right?
I do, but I don't like having pointless arguments about the fly on the wall that you imagine is there and is it a lie if you didn't know that it's a lie and all
Well,
that.
you're claiming it's a lie.
It is still a falsehood, as
You're saying it's a
stated.
falsehood.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
You're claiming knowledge you don't have. That
do you believe there
I
are
know
any,
things I don't know. That's a false statement.
Are there any necessary truths?
I don't even know what a necessary truth is.
You don't.
Right.
So then how are you responding even to my argument?
By
And you're
telling
claiming I
you-
didn't present anything.
I'm not pretending to know
I-
things I don't know. I'm honestly telling you when I don't know, which is another thing that faith does. Faith can't say that I don't know. Faith always pretends to know what it doesn't know, which is what makes it the most dishonest position it is possible to have.
You're saying it's dishonest.
Yes.
So everybody who has faith is dishonest.
Faith is the most dishonest position possible to have, yes. Because
Really?
because you were
There's no possibility. You cannot stand in reason that I believe what I'm saying. I'm just totally wrong about it. That's not even possible.
No, you can absolutely believe And remember, we said that believe could mean make believe, because I've talked to a lot of people before where it actually does mean make believe.
No, but you're saying we're dishonest. Why can't you just say
because
that,
you're
Jake is
asserting
wrong
knowledge you
or
don't
whatever
have.
else?
You're asserting baseless speculation as if it's a matter of fact, which for what?
Aaron, sometimes there are things that you think you know, but then it turns out you're wrong. Does
Right.
that mean that you were a dishonest piece of crap? No, it just means you turned out to be wrong.
Yeah, and you
So
could
why
turn out.
couldn't you? Why can't you grant that when you're having a debate or discussion with people of faith when they say
Because
that they know something and you think they're totally wrong,
Uh-huh.
but they believe that they know what they're saying
Okay.
is actually true, and then it turns out maybe it's not true.
Then show me the truth of it. Show me how you know that.
I'm attempting to do it, but I'm trying to get somewhere with you because you make this statement all the time. You're assuming that your interlocutor is dishonest, and then that spoils the conversation.
Claiming knowledge you don't have.
I believe that you don't believe God exists. I believe that. I don't think you're being dishonest.
You're claiming.
I just think you're wrong. So
You're asserting facts that are not in evidence.
Okay, so anyone who
That's
disagrees
dishonest.
with you, anyone who disagrees with you,
No.
right, and is wrong,
No.
and they claim that they know what you're saying is actually wrong, but they happen to be wrong, they're dishonest?
No. That's
Makes sense.
why did no. I said or implied nothing remotely like that. And I have to wonder where you're going with this when you distort everything I did say so clearly to put it
Just
into
made
this
a claim about faith. You said
pervert-
everybody who has faith is dishonest.
I didn't say that. I said faith is the most dishonest position it is possible to have because it is convincing oneself to believe things that are not evidently true. It's asserting baseless speculation as if it's a matter of fact and pretending to know things you don't know. All three of these things are false. They are
But
dishonest.
You're saying they're pretending to know.
Yeah,
But they
I know
believe-
for a fact there's a God. No, you don't.
Yes, you say that they know. Do you believe that I think that there's no God? Do you think that?
No,
Okay, so I believe.
but you will still
I
say.
believe there's a God,
but
and
you
I
will
believe
still say-
I believe I know that there's a God,
Right,
and
and
you
you
can tell
don't.
me I'm too exactly. That's what the debate is about.
So you
that
will-
doesn't mean I'm dishonest when I say that.
When
I
you
know.
say that you know things you don't know, that's not dishonest?
No, because I believe that I know it.
How? But you don't, because knowledge is demonstrable. You
Exactly,
can't demonstrate that knowledge.
But a lie is only when someone has the intention of misleading somebody else.
Or when you state a fact that you don't know to be true, because it doesn't have
Yeah,
to.
but if you believe you know it to be true, then it's not a
But
lie.
again, if you're making a statement you can't know to be true, you just made up your own statistic, right? Well, maybe that statistic,
make
maybe
up
it
the
really was 96% of statistics are made up on the spot. But when you say that, it's still a falsehood. Even if it happened to be correct, it's still a falsehood.
Yeah, it's false, but it's not a lie.
If you're
equating
claiming to
false
know
with
things
lies.
you don't know, and there's no way that you could know, you can't demonstrate that knowledge to be true. You got no business saying that it's true.
You still don't even know what truth is. So how are
I
you in
explained it to you
position
over and over again. You still don't know,
Okay,
despite
so
the simplest
what is
fucking
it?
thing.
You just told me you don't know what a necessary truth is, didn't you?
I don't know what a necessary truth is. Oh, now the adjective matters, right?
Yeah, it does.
So if I know what
Well,
truth is, but I don't
okay,
know what a
let's make this
necessary
simple.
truth is.
You know what truth means? Yes. You know
Yeah.
what necessary means? Put them together. Come on, put them together.
Tell me,
It's not that
'cause
hard.
Philosophy often uses definitions I wouldn't use.
Okay, so what's
So-
a necessary truth? You don't
I
know.
have no
Okay,
idea.
so I presented an argument from necessary truth. How in the hell could you even attempt to respond to it when you don't even know what it is?
Especially since I've told you that honestly, and you won't even explain yourself. Or,
Okay, so you admit
and-
that you are not actually responding to my argument. That's what you admit right now.
right, I'm not responding
thank
to it.
you very much.
Yeah, I don't have the slightest idea where you think you're going with this. All I
Okay,
know
so
from
we
past
went over
experience,
truth. We went over truth for 45 minutes.
and you got it wrong the entire time.
Okay, I got it wrong, and I lied
No.
to. I lied to everybody.
when
and
you
that's
when you make
everybody that
statements
comes
when
up
you make
here just
statements about who
lies.
God is and what he is and what he does and what he hates and why, all of those are statements you don't know to be true, but
Okay,
you're
so what
asserting
does
them
the
as
word
fact
necessary
anyway.
mean? What does the word necessary mean? And how you understand it. Tell me how you understand
We
it.
have multiple definitions of belief. We have multiple definitions of a lot of the different words that
But
we
I'm
use.
asking you how
So
you
whenever I
understand
argue with a
necessary.
believer, well, then I have different contexts. Well, do you have faith in your wife? You say you don't have faith, but you have faith in your wife. Well, that's a completely different context because trust is not religious faith. So I'm used to the equivocation that constantly happens in religious debates. So I'm wondering what
Well,
the
that's why I'm
equivocation
asking
is here.
you, so we don't
That's
have that
why
problem.
I told you I don't know, and I'm asking for your
So you
definition,
don't know
which
the-
you will not
you don't know
provide.
the meaning of the English word necessary.
Oh,
No.
I do. I know.
What is it?
I could think of multiple contexts,
Okay,
but
give
that
it to
doesn't
me.
tell me the definition you're using. I can come
So
up.
I
I can
asked
show
you a
you.
question, and you turn around, ask me a
I
question.
showed you we can have multiple definitions and context for
Okay,
any
so
number of
let's go
words,
through 'em.
and
Let's
so
work
I
through it.
need your definition. How do you mean
Let's
that?
work through it. I just asked you what
Can you give
mean
the
by it.
definition? What does it matter what I mean? You're the one using the term.
Because in order for
Define
us to
your
have
term.
communication, we have
You
to be
need to
using,
define your terms.
we have to be using terms the same way.
Then
It doesn't matter
define
if
it.
I define it or you.
You're the one using the term. Tell me what it means to you. I said I don't know what you mean. How would I know what you mean?
I literally presented it in
Then
my opening
explain the
statement.
definition to me.
I literally presented it
I
in my
literally
opening statement.
wailed on
I
for a while
said-
without
I
ever
said,
defining what this
Premise
means.
1 is necessarily true, i.e., it is true and could not have failed to be true.
Okay.
That's what it means to be necessary. It could
Okay.
not fail to be the way it is.
Okay.
So that's necessary. We already went over truth. Do you believe there are any necessary truths?
Maybe there are, but I don't understand the context in which you're using them.
Well, I just
Because-
defined it. So
Okay.
now, what do you want me to do?
So when necessary means that it has to be, it can't be otherwise.
It could not have, in this case, when we're talking about necessary truth, we're
Right.
talking about truth that could
Right.
not have failed to be true.
Okay.
I mean, that's simple enough. I don't see
Okay.
what's the problem.
So I'm not aware of any necessary truth I could name.
You're not.
No.
So the law of non-contradiction is not a necessary truth.
Not according to quantum physics, which is confusing as hell. But yeah, that's true.
Well, I just thought you said before that you believe that the law of non-contradiction is true.
Generally, yes, but that doesn't apply in quantum, does it? Classical, fine, all day. But I listen to quantum physicists, I'm like, the fuck are you saying? So no, they don't appear to have this law of non-contradiction applied the same way. So I don't know when we get into talking about cosmogony, as you like to do. I don't go there because I don't know anything about quantum physics. It's not something I study.
Yeah, but I'm just, in this case, okay, so you don't think that, you're saying you're agnostic about it.
No,
Or you're saying it's not a necessary truth.
no. I said I can't think of a single example
I
to
know,
say
but I'm
yes.
talking about the
In
law of
order for me to
non-contradiction.
say, in order for me to answer your question, is there a necessary truth? I have to have an
Well, that's
example
what I'm trying to go
that
for
I can.
examples.
Then give me an example.
Okay, law of non-contradiction. You don't believe it's a necessary truth.
As just explained,
Okay, 2 + 2 = 4.
as just explained, physicists will say that there could be potential universes where other things would be different. Now, I would accept that numerals and mathematics, they do seem to hold that must be a consistency.
Yeah, like 2 + 2 = 4.
You would think, but then some physicists say that the laws of physics could be different. Well, how could the laws of physics be different in any other sense? Because physics is mathematics,
well, let
right?
me read a quote from Aron Ra. How about that?
Right.
Aron Ra says, okay, and one of them... and
Now
this
we're going to
is-
hear a true
Yeah,
statement.
we're going to hear a true statement. We're going to hear necessary truths right here. And one of them, referring to religious people, that's my insertion there, confessed that if the Bible said that 2 + 2 = 5, so you were telling a story.
Yep.
You were telling a story about a person who said that if the Bible confessed that 2 + 2 = 5, he wouldn't question that he would find some way to believe it. And then you went on to say, I have a serious philosophical objection to assertions like this. In my perspective, accuracy and accountability are paramount. Truth matters more than whatever we would rather believe.
Yep.
Now, when I read that and when I listen to it, I say, wow, I agree
Yep.
with that, Aron, because I have, Trinitarian Christians telling me all the time, well, they believe Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is God, and they're each God, but it's only one God. It's contradictory. It doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
And then I ask them the same question. Well, if in the Bible it said 2 + 2 = 5, would you believe it? And some of them say yes. And then what do I say? Have a nice day, buddy. Bye-bye. Because there's no reason to even talk to such a person. Now, why do I have the same reaction that you would? Because there's an assumption that 2 + 2 cannot equal 5, i.e. that 2 + 2 = 4 is a necessary truth. It's true and could not have failed to be true. It doesn't matter if the Bible said it or Aron Ra proclaimed it or anyone else for that matter.
Yeah.
So 2 + 2 = 4 seems like a perfect example of a necessary truth.
I would have thought so until a mathematician came to me and said, you know what, 2 + 2 actually can equal 5 depending on higher values of 5. Like, what?
And you
So-
believe that.
I don't do higher math. I'm not a mathematician, so it makes no sense to me, but I obviously can't call that a necessary
So,
truth if
Aaron,
the
if we-
mathematicians say that it's not true.
Okay, so Aaron, if we
Then
bring-
it becomes the issue of they're going to believe whatever the Bible says simply because the Bible says so. Then that's
I agree.
another matter. That's not because of some higher, lofty mathematics that I'll never comprehend.
No, but I'm saying you making that statement, you're assuming that this person is out of their mind to believe that. Why?
No.
Because you're assuming that 2
No.
plus 2 equals 4.
No.
Yes, that's
No.
exactly what it is.
Again, you asked if it was a necessary truth. I would have thought so. I would have answered that way had more than one mathematician corrected me on that exact point. So there are extenuating circumstances on a number of things. So I can't think of a single example of a necessary truth. Not one. Not even that one. And on the case of he's just going to believe whatever the Bible says. This goes back to William Jennings Bryan, who was the lawyer for creationism in the Scopes monkey trial, 1925. When they grilled him on the stand about how could he believe something so ridiculous as Jonah being swallowed by the whale and living inside the whale for 3 days, Bryan responded that if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed the whale, I'd believe it. So it doesn't matter. Logic, rationality, right out the window. They're going to believe.
Why would it matter? Because, I mean, we could say 2 plus 2 equals 5. So what's the difference?
Right. It's not a necessary truth then.
Exactly. So it's not a necessary truth that Jonah couldn't swallow the whale.
How do we know that? Because
Exactly. That's the point. So that's what I'm saying. This conversation devolves into, well, Jonah then, I mean, if 2 plus 2 equals 5, then Jonah could swallow the whale. What the hell? Why not?
Is the whale this big?
Is 2 plus 2 equal to 5? Because it seems so
Is the
impossible
whale-
to you. Just like you said, Aaron. You said, well,
Is the
I'm
whale
not
a Hebrew
mathematician.
word for sardine?
I'm not a mathematician either, right? So
Okay.
I'm sitting in the same position as you. Maybe I'm ignorant. Maybe I'm a buffoon. And I think 2 plus 2 equals 4, but that's what I've been taught all my life, and nobody told me
Granted.
otherwise. So if somebody comes along and tells me otherwise, then we would need to have 2 mathematicians up here, because I bet you I can find mathematicians saying the opposite, that no, 2 plus 2 cannot equal 5.
And being
And then we what? Me and
Well,
you
no,
need
no, no.
to sit over
It's-
there,
it's not that
and we
they-
need to
it's
watch them
not that
debate
they
and see what
say-
happens.
It's not that they say that it can't equal 5, but that it can equal 5.
No, I know that's what you're saying. But I'm saying to you, do you think that I would be able to, or even you yourself, could find a mathematician who's just as qualified as the person saying that, who rejects that claim?
How
Or
would
are
I
you saying
know?
that there, and that's my whole point to you. You're claiming
Thank
that
you
it's
for making my
ridiculous.
point to me.
No, you're claiming that it's ridiculous for someone to believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5.
No, I'm saying it's dishonest to assert knowledge you don't have, to make statements or make assertions declaring facts that are not facts.
Okay,
If
so
you
then-
don't know that it's a fact, you got no business saying that
Okay,
it's a
so
fact.
as soon as the person meets the same guy, the same
Right.
mathematician that told you that 2 plus 2 equals 5, he can then turn around and jam you and say, well, yeah, Johnny, the mathematician, he told me 2 plus 2 could equal 5. So if the Bible said it, wouldn't be any big deal.
The issue was, again, they're believing whatever the Bible says simply because the Bible says so. Even in cases like this particular guy does not know what the higher mathematicians, the 2 of them, were talking about when they told me this. He's just going to believe whatever the Bible says. So he's rejected reason is the issue there.
Yeah, but why has he rejected reason?
Because he wants to believe what he wants to believe. It doesn't matter what the truth is.
No, but in virtue of what did he reject reason?
Because he wants to believe what he wants to believe.
Yeah, but because in this example, you're saying 2 plus 2 equaling 5.
Yeah, he's finding an example where he thinks that would be a necessary truth, and he's going to violate that. He thinks that's a
But
necessary
you also
truth.
seem to be assuming that it was and maybe at the time of this statement, you were assuming it was a
At
necessary
the time
truth.
of that statement, I thought it was pretty clear.
Yeah, so you thought the guy was out of his mind.
But the reason, again, is that he's rejected reason. He's going to
Okay,
believe
but
whatever
now
the
what
Bible
I'm saying
says.
now in hindsight, okay, now he can come forward and say, well, I've got a mathematician that says 2 plus 2 equals 5. So Aaron, you can't use that
Again,
example anymore.
the reason is because he's going to believe whatever the Bible says regardless. So he has rejected reason. He's just going to go with authority, not with fact. You remember what fact is? Objectively verifiable data. You remember what the debate was supposed to be?
Yeah,
You
but
show
how do we
evidence.
verify 2 plus 2 equals 4? Because you're going by authority
Again,
by the
it doesn't have to
mathematician.
be
You didn't
absolute.
verify it.
Again, it doesn't have to be absolute. Just show me what is supported versus
Did
what is
you
not
verify
supported.
that 2 plus 2 equals 5? Or did you take it on authority by the mathematician?
I
The
can
very thing
verify
that you're
that 2
claiming
plus
is wrong
2
to do.
can equal 5. I never said it cannot equal 5. I said that other mathematicians have explained that from their
Can equal 5.
expertise that it could.
So you're taking it on authority.
No.
Yes, you are.
I'm not,
because you haven't.
I'm not questioning
haven't
expertise.
proved-
I'm not pretending to know more than the experts, which is another issue of faith, by the way. Pretending to know more than the experts.
You're claiming that this person who says that 2 plus 2 can equal to 5, you did not verify that other than asking him, who's a claimed expert, and him telling you.
Yeah,
so you have not actually verified it.
No, I haven't.
Other than him saying it.
Yeah, I haven't.
So you could have asked 3 more mathematicians. They could have said, "Well, that guy that told you, I'm sorry."
If I
Aron,
cared, unfortunately, it was 2 different ones independently who came to me at different times. So I had to think, okay, well now there seems to be that there are.
So you're taking it on authority.
No, I'm not taking it on authority. I'm not questioning the expert. I'm not pretending to know more than the experts.
You're not saying
I don't
it's correct?
actually. No, I'm not saying. I don't say that I know that 2 plus 2 can equal 5 under any higher value of 5 or whatever the fuck he's talking about. I don't know.
You don't know.
But I'm not right. So I'm not saying that I do know.
Okay, so you don't know that 2 plus 2 cannot equal to 5.
I don't know that. No.
You don't.
No, that's what I said 30 minutes ago when I said I don't know of a necessary truth, and this was the reason I gave. Have you noticed we do a lot of spinning in the mud where I have to keep re-explaining things to you again?
We did.
Like 15 times and you still
And
don't
I
get
tried to
it?
explain
And I'm
it
sure
to
that's
you.
because I'm stupid, right? The reason I
Well,
have to keep
you're the
explaining.
guy that thinks 2 plus 2 can equal 5. So
I don't think that.
I
And
don't think so.
I'm the one who corrected you multiple times to say I don't think that.
Okay, but you don't know that it can.
But I don't know that it can. And I'm not going to pretend to
Exactly.
know things I don't, like the faithful do.
Okay, so anybody, just for what you're saying, anybody who claims that they know that 2 plus 2 cannot equal to 5, it's faith. That's your claim?
No, of course not. That's something that's based on evidence. Faith is a firm conviction that is not based on evidence.
So if I say that 2 plus 2 cannot equal to 5, do I have faith in that?
If you have evidence to imply that it cannot equal to 5, and you would be justified because the level of your understanding would say, unless you're some higher mathematician, and I don't even know that that's true. I've only heard from 2 mathematicians talking what I think sounds like bollocks. I don't know what they're saying is true. I'm not going to challenge the experts in their own field. I know better than that, but I know better than to use that as an example of a necessary truth as you define it. Because not even as clear as that seemed to be. Did it seem clear, everybody? 2 plus 2 equals 4, would that be a necessary? You'd think, right? And then somebody hits me, well, maybe. Fuck!
So
I don't know of a single example.
you don't know of an example, but you're also not claiming that there is no example.
No, I'm not. I'm not pretending to know things I don't know.
Yeah, so you're saying you're agnostic on it. You don't know one way or another.
Fine. I don't know. If what you mean by agnostic is that I don't know, and I'm not going to say that I know. Because Huxley defined the agnostic precisely as that one should not pretend to know things they don't know. And in that sense, absolutely, yes. I don't know that 2 plus 2 equals 5 or 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a necessary truth because it may not be, so far as I know by the experts. So there's a possibility that maybe it isn't. So I can't state that. If I state it and I don't know it and I haven't verified it, so I can't know it, then that would be a falsehood. And even if it turned out that my guess was correct, it would still be false for me to pretend to know what I don't.
Right. So in simple terms, Aron Ra has just admitted that he cannot know that 2 plus 2 cannot equal 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did state that if given the explanation that these mathematicians give that I don't have any understanding about at all, I'm not going to challenge them on it. Correct.
I think the time's up, James. At least on my end. I don't know.
Yeah, the article's here. So what we'll do is we'll go to the 4-minute closing statements. Jake, the floor is yours.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just reset my timer here. Okay, so guys, I hope that this was of some benefit to the people in the audience. Aron doesn't seem to think so. I think that I demonstrated that he contradicted himself numerous times throughout the debate. He's going to make his closing statement and try to refute that when he claims that there are truths that exist that have not been discovered yet, and then says that truth depends on the sentences being uttered That's contradictory. And the fact that you cannot see that, sir, is probably the same reason why you cannot see that 2 plus 2 cannot equal to 5. I don't care how many mathematicians told you that. They need to get their head examined in the same way that you think everybody that has faith maybe needs to get their head examined. But what I tried to point out earlier, right, and this is why, because Aron consistently makes his claims all the time. Well, if people have faith, faith is the most dishonest position possible. Well, can't you stand and reason and think, well, maybe the person has faith, right? But they're not being dishonest, and it's not a dishonest position, right? They claim to know, and you can think that they're wrong, even though they don't think that they are. I can think that Aron Ra is out of his mind, which I really do at this point, by thinking that 2 plus 2 does not have to equal to 4. But at the same time, I don't think he's being dishonest. I think he believes whatever he's saying when he says that, no matter how ridiculous it seems to me. And I just wish he would afford the same thing, that when I say that I think that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and I know it, and it cannot be 5, that I don't have faith in that I know that it's true. I don't care how many mathematicians you can pull from out of your hat or wherever it is. I don't care how many tell me that. I don't believe what they're saying. And I would be happy if James can, maybe we'll have to do that for the next debate, James. We got to get a mathematician here to debate whether or not 2 plus 2 must equal to 4. I'm happy to do that. And maybe Aron would be happy to watch it. I don't know. Maybe he'd think it would be ridiculous. But anyway, I attempted to, at the very least, present evidence, yes, evidence for the existence of God. I gave a particular argument from necessary truth. Unfortunately, we got bogged down in definitions about what truth is, what necessity is, the distinction between truth makers and truth bearers. Aron agrees with me that there's a distinction between things that exist, right, like this black microphone. There's a distinction between things that exist, which are what the facts are, the verifiable empirical data, and truth, which is independent of those things, right? Now, on the one hand, he says that, well, truth is independent in the sense that there are truths that have not been discovered yet. Well, then where the hell are they? I mean, is there like truth in a cloud out somewhere and it's written in the stars or something like that? What is this truth that is being looked for? He calls himself a truth seeker and goes on about truth, but he cannot even define what truth is. He didn't even know what necessary in this context was, if necessary truth was. And my argument, and yes, I gave only one argument. Why? Because I knew he would get bogged down in the argument, and I don't want to be like some of the other apologists, come up here and give 10 different arguments and then expect that Aron is going to reply to all of them. No, I don't really think that's fair. I think at the very least, we should try to keep it succinct and limit it to a few arguments. Now, I limited it to one. Aron contradicted himself numerous times, as I pointed out. He says that, well, he doesn't know if there are any necessary truths. For him, he doesn't know if the law of non-contradiction holds universally. So why can't it be the case that God exists and also God does not exist? Well, that's contradictory. Well, it could be a true contradiction because the law of non-contradiction doesn't hold universally. Anyway, I think my time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll kick it Aron for his forming.
Yeah, we all hear that God exists outside of reality, which logically means that he does not exist in reality. So is that a contradiction or not? No, that's a consistency. Jake says that he knows more about math than any mathematician, and somehow he doesn't understand why it is dishonest to pretend to know more than he does, which is a key part of our argument. What he failed to do was present even one objectively verifiable fact that positively indicates his God. All he did do was hand wave away, utterly dismiss, without consideration, any and all of the evidence that lies contrary to his position, which again is what faith does. Yet he thinks he thinks that his inability to understand when I gave clear and consistent definitions for my terms, including truth, that he kept trying to distort and pervert, and I had to go back and correct him again and again and again. He thinks that his inability to get that right is somehow my problem. And then getting back to the factual matter, the holy doctrines of the various religions remain the only source of information of who or what God is supposed to be, and they violently contradict each other. This is another fact against God. Each of these tomes is individually full of absurdities and atrocities, inconsistencies and contradictions, so that none of the authors of these myths and legends actually knows what they're talking about. Nearly anything any of the scriptures says falls into one of two categories. It's either not evidently true, meaning that there's no evidence for it, or it's evidently not true, meaning it's already been shown to be false. The fact that the Bible and Quran and all of the rest of this man-made mythology even exists in such defective, conflicting condition is evidence against God, who should have corrected all that. And despite all attempts at philosophical rationalization, there is no actual factual evidence of God outside of Scripture either, literally not even a possibility to consider. The claim that an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving creator God exists is logically inconsistent and paradoxical due to the presence of suffering in the world, in a world that is, as Darwin described it, red in tooth and claw. The persistent existence of such a level of suffering throughout the Earth's history, as well as the extent of that history, remains in conflict with the attributes attributed to such a God. Moreover, considering the lack of logically coherent, verifiable evidence for the existence of the Abrahamic God specifically, it is reasonable to conclude that the claims of such deity are just a myth. It is essential to adhere to the fundamental principles of logic, which necessitate evidence and demonstrability when affirming the truth of a claim. Holding an absolute positive belief in anything, let alone something that lacks reliably verifiable proof, violates these principles. Rendering the claim of an Abrahamic God is not only a myth, but a baseless speculation, having no more credence than a claim that has already been proven false. Very often, believers may already know that there's no evidence of God or anything supernatural, but they're determined to make believe in it anyway for reasons that don't qualify as reason. So they have to find a way to shift the burden of proof onto the negative claim or onto someone who doesn't believe in their unsupported assertions of illogical, irrational, impossible absurdity. I mean, it should be that if you make a claim, you have to substantiate it or be dismissed and discredited for stating falsehoods. But faith is the most dishonest position it is possible to have because claiming facts that aren't facts and pretending to know things you don't know is what faith is all about. But in every other application, we would call that lying. The only way that faith could be any less honest or any more dishonest is if you're a religious apologist. Asserting speculation without reason and defending it against all reason is what apologetics is all about, making up any and all excuses to justify doctrinal errors and or to systematically dismiss or ignore any and all evidence against an a priori belief, to defend the faith even in those instances where you know it's not true. So they resort to an appeal to ignorance, as if they can assert whatever they want without any justification at all. We saw that tonight, and they think that they can refer to such lies as the absolute truth until or unless we can prove it false. Then apologists will still call it truth, even after it's been thoroughly disproved, because faith means never admitting when you're wrong. Because of one of the problems with a faith-based belief system is that there are required beliefs and prohibited beliefs where you're forbidden to admit certain truths that may call the faith into question because you have to believe a particular interpretation of doctrine no matter what, or else face the empty threat of eternal damnation. Additionally, there's usually an emotional attachment to certain faith beliefs, an often culturally conditioned, deep-seated need to believe that overrides our natural desire to understand. In either case, it means that the believer has to come up with some excuse, any excuse to keep on believing even when they know it's not true, as has happened a few times. People have admitted to me that they know it's not true, but they're going to believe it anyway. So they make up arguments instead of evidence, arguments that all require specific assumptions and typically depend on false dichotomy, where only two options are allowed and no others may be admitted, because the goal is not to seek the truth, but to avoid uncomfortable truths in defense of the faith. My problem is, and this is sincere, this is my problem, I can't relate to this. I can't choose to believe whatever I want to, especially when it's apparently indefensible, when there is no truth to it. The difference in our positions is that I want to know whatever the truth is, regardless what I might rather believe, whereas the faithful just want to believe whatever they want to, regardless what the truth is. Judging by several admissions I've heard, these so-called true believers apparently don't even care what the truth is. They want to make believe something else instead.
Time will go into the Q&A. So, Chris will be the MC for the Q&A. So Chris, thanks so much. If they just speak into the green light there. So you want to have it not moving forward.
Right here in front of the camera.
Hey guys, there's a little preamble, but I'll make it quick. The topic isn't can I frame a question that Aron can't answer or what doesn't Aron know? It's is the evidence for or against God? So for clarity, features of reality are the actual. They are not true. Sentences express a concept. Neither the sentence nor the concept is true. Truth exists only in the comparison or evaluation between the actual and the concept. Your concept of the sentence 2 + 2 = 5 might not match another person's concept of that statement. If the concept accurately represents the actual, we evaluate that as true. As a truth seeker, I seek accurate concepts about the actual. I'm seeking to gain concepts of reality that evaluate as true. The facts of reality aren't truth. They are the actual. And truth doesn't exist, in quotes, until there's a concept for comparison. The measure of truth or how the concept compares to the actual facts. So your previous attempt is to claim that truth exists without a concept. But now that I've actually rejected that, no concept, no statement, the truth exists only in the comparison between the two of them, I will rephrase the question you were asked multiple times during the debate. What is the objectively verifiable fact that confirms the God concept that you expressed is actually correct?
Yeah, so you misrepresented me when you said that I think that truths can exist apart from concepts. No, in fact, what I argued is that truths are mental entities. So I don't know why, maybe it was because we got bogged down in other parts of that stuff. But it seemed like you didn't understand that. I'm sorry that you're upset, sir. I don't understand.
I'm just not a fucking idiot.
Okay. Maybe you're not an idiot, but maybe you can't hear very well because I never denied that truth.
What?
I never denied. Well, maybe I can. Well, Matt, maybe I can actually correct you first on your lie.
I don't
or
think
your
so.
Statement.
Yeah.
On your lie.
About
Because you just claimed what I said about truth that was not true.
when Aron asked you for your objective fact to prove God, you said
That's the second
Are
part
you
of your. That's your
You're
second.
gonna allow me to
Sir,
finish?
you can go back to your seat and
You
sit
better
down.
can't.
You can. You can go back and sit down because I'm going to finish responding. I'm going to finish responding to your question, sir. This is not a debate. This is not a debate. This is not a debate. If you would be quiet for a second. You do because maybe you don't want a response.
I apologize.
Maybe you don't want a response.
You are absolutely correct. I should sit down and be quiet. This is your debate. If you don't want to present the objective fact,
I am, but you're not allowing me to get to it.
do that.
I am, but you're not allowing me to get to it. Okay, you're making it a second debate. You're making it a second debate. What you can do is you can sit down and be quiet. You can sit down and be quiet. Okay, go ahead and sit down.
Sit down.
Go and sit down.
Matt said he apologized, so let's just move.
Yeah, but he's still trying to talk when I'm trying to give my answers. Anyway, so I was trying to correct the first part of what you said, your preamble, which was a misstatement, or I claim that it's a lie, because you claimed that I believed that truth was somehow independent of any concept. No, I never claimed that, sir.
That's what you said.
In fact, what I said was that truth is a mental entity, right? So that's fully compatible with it being conceptual. I never said anything about truth existing apart from concepts whatsoever. I never made that claim. Now, what's the verifiable data? Well, I was trying to present it, and it's the fact that truths exist, that true propositions exist, and that at least one necessary truth exists, which because necessary truths and truths in general are mental entities, that's going to entail the existence of a necessary mind. Now, Matt, I know you're sitting down and just wrapping this up. If you'd like to debate the topic, we could do it another time. I have no problem with it. And then you can speak as much as you want and tell me how much you don't like me. Go ahead.
And I would like to clarify, just in common verbiage, as I mentioned before, that philosophers often use definitions, have different definitions than common parlance. When you say something and the statement is true. We can verify that it is true. When people ask or challenge or maybe defend, he's telling the truth. So that is the context that I've been using this whole time.
Next question. Please step up. Here. In front of the camera right here. Step up. Speak clearly.
Thank you for the debate.
Thank you.
I'm glad to admit that I am probably the only idiot here. My question is to Jake. Jake, it looked like you tried to present an evidence in almost 7 pages. I am sorry to admit that I did not get the evidence. Maybe it was because it was too long, so I could not hold my attention. Is there any way to express your evidence in 3, 4, 5 sentences, 30 seconds? Is there a way that common people like I can understand and still it will be long like 7 pages? Possible?
Yes, I mean, I think you mean 7 premises, not 7 pages. But yeah, simply what I tried to sum up in my response to Matt was my argument is an argument from necessary truth. Okay, I'm making the claim that truth exists. It's an actual existent thing. Okay, not that it's independent of any concept or anything like that, but it's actually a real thing. Okay, and that necessary truths exist. Truths are mental entities. Okay, and I gave an argument to explain why they're mental entities because they have certain features.
That was answered. Move forward, please.
Yeah, they have certain features, one of them being intentionality, which is that they are about other things, which are the same sorts of things that mental entities have. Okay, so I'm making the claim that truth is a mental entity, it's a type of mental entity or thought, and that if you have a necessary truth, you need the existence of a necessary mind or intellect in order to ground that. Otherwise, you cannot account. I'm explaining it to you. It's very simple. If all human thoughts and all thoughts besides God's thoughts or mental entities.
Don't involve what you're trying to prove or you don't involve what now.
No, I'm not trying to prove anything. You asked me to explain my argument. I'm not trying to prove it now. That's not what I'm trying to do. You asked me what's the gap between. It's that all human beings and all human thoughts are contingent. Therefore, they are not the type of thing that could qualify as necessary truths because they don't exist necessarily. If necessary truth exists, then it has to exist in something that is necessary.
So 2 plus 2, therefore God.
Well, you don't even believe 2 plus 2 equals 4 necessarily, so what's the difference?
I fully accept that normally 2 plus 2 would be 4, yes.
Next question.
But there's no way that you can jump to 2 plus 2 equals 4, therefore God.
Well, that's the debate.
And there was no fact given. Anybody hear a fact in there? Okay.
Sorry, I'll try to answer shorter.
Hi there. As a former Methodist, I attend these debates to see if there's a reason that I should start believing in a God or what specific God. And it's frustrating because every time someone gives an argument, it feels like it's not evidence that they're playing philosophy word games and defining truth. And it's like all other truths in the world that I know of can be demonstrated with experiments or discoveries to show something is true. It's not just words or scripture that's true, it's what they represent. And I'm wondering if there's any evidence you have that can be demonstrated in science, not philosophy or Webster dictionaries, just hard evidence.
Yeah, there are other arguments that I could have presented and I've presented in other venues that focus more on what you would consider tangible science and things of that sort. Certainly there are arguments, but I didn't present a scientific argument. I presented a philosophical argument for the existence of God.
But of course, the purpose of the debate was to present evidence, not arguments.
Yeah, and a philosophical argument can be evidence. That's the point.
Not on a scientific topic.
It's not scientific.
You gotta move to the next question.
Like the previous questioner, I'm trying to understand your argument because perhaps you have some kind of evidence that I'm unaware of, but I'm having a little trouble understanding your argument. So I'm paraphrasing here. Is your argument that because there that reality exists, then it's necessary that a mind existed that created it? Is that where we're going here?
No. I'm to sum it up. I mean, I try to sum it up a different way. Uh, that truth is dependent on minds, and that if you have a necessary truth, it has to be dependent on a necessary mind. That's the simplest way I can state it.
Okay, like,
Which it doesn't.
but
It's a false
Well,
assumption.
you don't know if they exist or not, so you don't know.
Doesn't matter. You're making a leap that's unjustified.
okay. So, is there evidence for God? Your evidence is because there's
E plus 2,
minds.
therefore God.
No, there's minds that there's a necessary mind that created that.
No, because truth exists, and truth is a mental entity, and necessary truths exist, then you need a necessary mind.
But okay, but you didn't give any evidence. Like, even if there
did.
were a necessary mind, what is your demonstrable evidence that it was a God?
I appreciate the question, ma'am. My evidence, again, was the existence of truths, the existence of at least one necessary truth, which then would entail the existence of a necessary mind.
Except that it doesn't.
I gave arguments and evidence for the existence
You
of
gave no
truth. Let me
evidence.
finish, sir. You're going to get your turn. Don't worry. Okay. I gave an argument and evidence for the existence of truths and necessary truths. Now go ahead.
Well, you didn't give either one. What you did was you wanted to assume, just like when if there's a necessary being and it's dead unconscious material, that somehow magically transforms in your mind into an immaterial living consciousness. Same thing. 2 + 2 = 4. Therefore, God. That was your leap. It's completely unjustified. You presented never at any time an objectively verifiable fact supporting your position. You've had 3 people come up in the Q&A so far. All of them have asked you the same question. What is your evidence? Obviously, at this point, even you should have figured out you haven't given any.
I have given it.
Why the hell does nobody know about it?
Probably for the same reason that you don't know that 2 + 2 can't = 5.
All right, next question.
So my question is to Aaron. Is it true
Aron.
that Aaron, sorry.
Sorry.
Is it true that harming others is wrong? If so, could you provide the empirical evidence for that?
Yes, it's our evolution as a social species. Globally, it doesn't matter what society you're in. We all understand that if I walk up to somebody just unprovoked and I unnecessarily cause them damage, an unprovoked attack, everybody, everywhere, every community, all time, it's objectively verifiable that a physical attack on somebody without the necessity to do so is wrong. That's objective morality.
But how can you prove, like, what is, if you're saying
Because
if I can
we're a
kill
social
you, that's okay?
species. No, because we're a social species, and so we depend on society. No man is an island. Have you ever heard that term? Have you ever heard the term "no man is an island"? What phrase?
Okay, so if I had amassed power over, let's say a country.
Okay, never mind. You're missing the point.
Right.
The point is that we depend on society. We're a social species, and society, in turn, although it seems to be an abstract concept, also depends on us to
So if I
cohabitate
can run
productively.
society,
So society, and I mean global
so
society,
if
just
I can
whatever.
harm others but still run society, would that still be wrong?
The community in which we live, whether it's local or it's global, doesn't matter. Society depends on us to cohabitate productively. So what ends up
But
happening
what
is,
if it didn't? What if we could create a
oh, what if
society
reality
where-
wasn't real?
So what if I could create a society where I could subjugate a group of people and do that successfully?
Then you're going to have to come up with a bullshit excuse to justify your inhumanity, which people have
But
done.
why
They
is that
usually,
wrong?
the reason that I'm trying to explain, you keep interrupting the answer to keep asking the question. Maybe if you just let the answer happen, you'd get it. So society depends on us to cohabitate productively. Now, in order to do that, if you are selfish, if you are apathetic, then you are eventually going to be eliminated as a issue of population mechanics. You're going to be eliminated from society either by being banished, imprisoned, or killed. Whereas the guy who shows the empathy for his family, friends, and fellows, who can be relied upon, who stands by his word, and people know that they can trust him, again, mathematically over the course of population mechanics, that person is going to be favored. That person is going to be more productive. Is going to be more socially acceptable, be granted more power and wealth, will produce better and more. So that what ends up happening over the course of many generations is that we have people who develop empathy far more than any of the other apes do. So that was the thing that gave us strength, was our ability.
The result is what's wrong, not the action. So if I could,
What?
if I could
Sorry, we've got so many other questions that I think you have to keep us moving.
Okay, no, said nothing remotely like that at all. But it's obvious when you asked the question, you were trying to find fault, not an answer.
Yeah, can I just respond for 10 seconds, James? Just because,
Literally.
yeah, 10 seconds. You just didn't understand. You're too dumb to understand, just like the other people didn't
Yeah,
understand.
that's his words,
Yeah,
not mine.
it's sarcastic.
Okay.
Yeah,
For the
because
next
that's
question-
not at all what I said.
All right, on to the next question. Thank you.
We've all been waiting to hear what evidence you have for a God. I'd be curious to see what your definition of evidence is and if you believe that you've presented anything that actually touches evidence for a God.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same question again, which I already answered.
Funny that.
But the
I wonder why that is.
the definition I gave, if you were listening in the presentation.
Oh, see, it's
Okay.
because you're too stupid.
No, because that's what you're saying to this gentleman here.
That's
you're
not
saying
what
the
I
same
said.
thing.
Maybe
You said
too
you
stupid,
said
but
that he
that's
didn't
not
want
what
to
I said
listen to
him.
your answer.
I made an observation. It was not what you say.
Exactly, that's the same thing.
Which is completely different. Thus not.
Let me put it on the screen here. Okay, very quickly. I said, and I quote, I take evidence for a hypothesis to be that which raises the probability of a given theory to be true, and I take evidence against hypothesis to be that which lowers the probability of a given theory to be true. So I did define what evidence is, and Aron himself didn't give it verbatim the same thing, but it was similar.
Evidence, the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. What kiss? That's what we got out of you.
Sure.
All right, next question.
Hello, Aaron. As an atheist, I find myself in the scale of Richard Dawkins as a 6.9. Meaning
7.
That's my question. So I don't affirm that there's no God. I
Yeah,
believe
God is
there's
not
no
even
God.
possible.
So what evidence do you have for that?
I believe I already expressed
You didn't
it.
see it. He presented it all night. Where were you?
If God is not even a possibility, as I explained, we don't even have a possibility to consider. We have science that considers what is supported, what is not supported. Where was the support for God? He was supposed to present it. So we are left wanting.
That's not evidence against God.
Quick follow-up.
No, but it's not evidence for God, is there? And
I
that's all that
presented it.
matters.
I presented it.
That nobody saw.
Plenty of people saw it.
Where are you?
Well, we can look on the live stream and see what all the people say.
Okay.
Very
Yeah.
quick. Yes.
But they're not in this room.
Very quick. Very quick follow-up.
I do have a follow-up. So I do believe that with an infinite universe, we cannot know everything.
Right?
So I know that there's no evidence for God. We cannot claim that there's none.
Yeah.
God.
I didn't. Again, it's what is supported and what is not. What is the evidence for God? We don't have any. We have evidence against God. We have nothing for God. Therefore, we have no choice but to conclude there evidently is no God.
Next question.
Okay, my question is for you, Jake. You believe that everything is contingent of a God, right?
Everything other than God is dependent upon God. Yeah.
Okay, why?
Why?
Why and how?
Because I believe God created everything.
How is that evidence?
I didn't say that was evidence. You asked me why. You asked
Okay,
me
do you have evidence for it?
what?
Anything else to that? Okay, thank you very much.
You asked me why do I believe it? It's definitional. No.
I love that kid.
All right, we're gonna move to the next question. Step up a little bit. All right.
My question is for Jake. I understand your premise as there's truth outside of people's stances, and before they can figure it out, it's true. How do you reconcile the fact that what you consider to be truth without evidence may not be true?
what I consider to be truth without evidence may not be true. I don't understand. Can you clarify?
So you stated that your stance, your position, is that truth exists outside of humans, right? So if you come across something that's not true, how do you reconcile that? It's not true. Like what
Well,
if,
you
for
know,
example, like your God is not true. You can't prove that it is, but you
well, I
can't prove
think
it
I
is
have.
not. How do you reconcile that? How do you
I
reconcile the
reconcile
lack
it.
of knowledge?
I reconcile it by demonstrating, as I think I have, and today in other places, that God does exist, and I do believe that truth, as I explained earlier, is dependent on what the facts are, as Aron keeps repeating. That's not a difference of opinion, but that doesn't mean that truth is identical to the microphone, because we don't say that that's true.
Okay, next question. Okay.
Hi, my question is for both speakers. Aside from a god or gods, can you think of anything that exists that people have to argue for the existence of using philosophy?
God is kind of unique in that category, isn't he?
I can answer, yeah, plenty of things. We can talk about mathematics, logic, as the gentleman just asked, morality. There are plenty of things that people argue in philosophy that has nothing to do with God.
Does mathematics exist in the same way that God exists?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, next question.
they're both necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a question about I guess for Jake and Aron, please, if you can pipe in there. You said that I understand the argument that you presented tonight, Jake. I guess maybe I might be the only one that fears that truth exists outside of our minds, kind of tapping on what people have been saying. So my question is are all thoughts from humans the same as the thoughts that God has?
Is you done?
As a qualifier, there's a little extra to it.
No,
But
God has thoughts that we don't have. Correct.
all those thoughts, is the idea of God thought the same as a human thought? Are they the same things?
No, they're not identical. No.
So then why are they contingent upon the same thing? Why are they both contingent upon a mind?
What do you mean? Sorry.
If they're not the same thing, then why are they both contingent upon the same things, i.e., the existence of a mind?
Well, because I can have multiple thoughts that are contingent upon my mind, and those thoughts are not the same. Just as God can be a mind that knows things such as truths, and he can know many truths that I also know, and yet my thoughts are not his thoughts. They're not identical in that way.
If they're the same, if they're both are the same thing, God thought, same thing, they're both contingent upon a mind. God's thoughts are dependent on God's mind. Our thoughts are contingent upon our minds.
Yeah.
But they're not the same, but they're contingent upon the same thing, which is
because they're both related to a mind. Yeah, okay, so they're both related to a mind. But the difference is that God is necessary, so he's a type of being that can ground necessary propositions. Human beings are contingent, so they don't fulfill that role.
Yeah. God is not necessary, he's imaginary.
Hi, my question is for Aron.
Aron.
Aron. Sorry.
By the way, I tried to call you Aron the whole time. I think you could at least give me that. I mean,
Aron, so
I
it
appreciate
seems
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have no idea how old this gets.
So Aron, it seems from the debate here and other debates I've seen of yours, and it seems like your general position on what evidence entails seems to be empirical, scientific evidence.
Yeah.
My question for you is, how do you justify asking for empirical, scientific evidence for something that is, by its very nature, non-empirical and outside the scope of science?
Because every example I gave would be different if there was a God. All of the holy books, all telling contradictory things, all claiming to be the absolute truth in the revealed word, even though they're mutually exclusive and violently conflicting. And when they're full of falsehoods, then the absolute truth of the Bible is no better than the absolute truth of the Quran when they're both demonstrably wrong.
That's not what I asked. I'm asking why
Right,
you
so you-
asked for empirical. Because the whole time you've been asking Jake,
Right.
give me demonstrable empirical scientific evidence.
Right, so
why
for
are you
example,
asking for scientific empirical
for
evidence
something
an
that
entity
would
that,
be
that by its
empirically
very nature is
verifiable,
not empirical?
which
and
but
not-
is empirically verifiable. Either there is a God and when there's an afterlife, meaning that we have to have souls, or we conclude that we don't have souls. I realize this doesn't apply so much with Islam because Islam imagines that we're all going to be reanimated corpses that all have to eat food in hell. But there's still the supernatural aspect for which there is zero support for anything supernatural at all. That includes miracles, effectively the same thing as magic. They have essentially the same definition. So all we have the support for God. We have a handful of books that are all wrong about everything. And then we have theologians, past and present, all over the place, who all contradict each other and make statements we can prove to be false. So we don't have any evidence for God at all. But we do have quite a lot that I listed, and I can go back over it with you, for things that are inconsistent with God. So facts that actually contradict the notion of there being God. Why don't faith healers work in hospitals? How come a faith healer has never healed an amputee? If there was a God, these things would happen. If magic existed, you would have people like Hermione and Gandalf and Obi-Wan and Spock who would be able to demonstrate this ability reliably. We don't have that because that's just another fact that is against God. Nothing for God, plenty against. And these are all empirical because of course they would be. If there was a God, these facts would be different.
Well, look, I just don't think you're answering my question. Things like faith healers, all these problems you have with scripture, they're not really relevant to whether this non-empirical entity exists or not.
Except that he is empirical.
You seem to be assuming that there must be some empirical evidence for something that by its very nature is not empirical, and I think that's where you're going.
Every time that God reaches his ethereal hand into the prime material plane to affect any change in nature, he's going to pull his arm out dripping with physics. He's going to leave some residue of himself. We will have indications when miracles happen. When, if in the Twin Towers attack, if the plane stopped 10 feet short of the building and just stood there in space and then was slowly lowered gently down, I would think, yeah, you know what? That's a something that we can look at that. And that would be empirical, right? Empirical for God. But we don't have telepathy. We don't have telekinesis. We don't have teleportation. We don't have anything that would be consistent with the God. All we have are things that are contradicting God.
Next question.
So this question is definitely for both speakers, and I apologize, Aron, if it sounds like I'm trying to smuggle in a presupposition. I do admit that, definitely. Would the existence of a necessary mind depend upon it also having an effect on the material universe? I think you already answered that, but I would love to hear a bit more about it.
If there was a necessary mind, if we were a dream in the mind of Brahma.
So, presupposing that it could exist.
Okay, if we presuppose the possibility that reality isn't real, that we're all figments of some god's imagination, then in that reality, there would be a necessary mind.
Would the existence of a necessary mind depend upon it also having an effect on the material universe?
Well, that's the instance in which it would. If we were, as the Zen Buddhists or whoever it was that put this, I forget, when they, obviously not Buddhists, but when they assert that we're just imaginary beings created as a dream of Brahma, and that when Brahma wakes up, we all cease to exist, that by definition would make Brahma a necessary mind.
Okay, next question. Step forward.
Cool. All right, question for Aron. I had a different question, but you mentioned 9/11, so I'll use that as a jumping off. Is it a moral failing for a layperson to hold an opinion and act as if that opinion is true that contradicts the experts?
No. As I said, you're welcome to believe.
You were talking about experts.
You're welcome to believe whatever you want, as long as you express that it is a belief. When you express it as a fact, when you can't show that it's a fact, then it becomes dishonest.
So, but following the experts, are we obligated as lay people to follow the experts?
No.
When they, so we're allowed to contradict them, and that's fine.
As Carl Sagan said, arguments from authority are worthless. There are no authorities in science. Question them all you like.
All right. Building 7.
Okay, next question.
Anybody see my eyes roll under these shades?
This might be a little funny, but are arguments evidence? Both participants.
The definition I just read was a body of facts.
Yes, sir.
meaning
Jake.
objectively verifiable data.
Jake, are arguments evidence?
If you have evidence for the premises in arguments, yes.
Why didn't you?
I did. I gave them.
You had an assumption. 2 + 2,
No,
therefore
I gave
God.
them. I gave them.
And it
You
was
didn't like them.
it was
but I gave them.
erroneous. It made no sense, and it wasn't justified.
So, Jake, you said that arguments can be evidence if you have like facts or
Evidence.
evidence behind them. So, what's the evidence that you have behind the argument that God exists?
I already gave it. If you didn't get it, sorry to tell you.
It was just arguments.
Yeah, I gave it already. You're asking the same question.
Because, I mean, there's no like physical evidence that you've been able to present. It's all just been.
Your
main
assumption
thing-
is that I need physical evidence. Do you have an argument for that?
Of
You have evidence for that.
Well, so we need evidence to prove that anything.
Is that a
exists.
scientific claim or a philosophical one?
It's I would say it's scientific.
No, it's philosophical. It's a philosophical claim, and yet you think that I need evidence, yet you're up here asking a question which assumes a philosophical principle which you don't have scientific evidence for.
So the idea that
Thank you
2
very
+
much,
2
sir.
=
Have a
4
nice day.
somehow requiring a magical mystical
Science
mind.
assumes many things that it can't prove, like
But it doesn't
mathematics,
assume
like
this.
logic,
It doesn't
and
assume
all
this.
of the other things that go with
So evidence is objectively verifiable
With
data.
that, I hate to do this to you guys, but just
Yeah,
because we
it's
do
time.
have to wrap up, folks, want to let you know we have VIP dinner in here in 15 minutes. It'll be in this room. We're bringing the food in. Otherwise, if you're not having dinner with us tonight, there's a Wendy's. They're just 2 minutes away. There's a lot of other places, but want to give a huge round of applause to both Jake and Aron. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you kindly.
Very good. That was one of the best I've seen in a while. So thank you, gentlemen. That was a very lively debate. And like I said, folks, we'll start that VIP dinner at 5:15. And then tonight's final debate will be at 7 p.m. with Matt Dillahunty and Daniel Hakikachu. So stick around for that. Folks, if you're watching online, I want to let you know Modern Day Debate, DebateCon, will be happening this Saturday, November 4th in Dallas, Texas. You don't want to miss it. You can get your tickets in the description box below. And if you're from across the world and you can't make it in person, hit that subscribe button, as Modern Day Debate will be live streaming all of those debates at our YouTube channel. Thanks so much. We'll see you at tonight's debate between Daniel Hakikachu and Matt Dillahunty. So stick around for that. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it, as well as many other upcoming debates. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.
I knew it would go over Aaron's head.
Yeah.